Well, hello, everyone. Good morning, everyone. It's great to have you all with us, both in person and those tuning in online. Many thanks for attending our conference today. For those that don't know me, my name is Michael Kugelman, and I direct the Wilson Center's South Asia Institute, which oversees our work on Pakistan. The Wilson Center's South Asia Institute and its Pakistan Initiative are pleased to be hosting today's conference on the U.S.-Pakistan relationship. I'd also like to thank our institutional co-sponsors, the Wilson Center's Environmental Change and Security Program and Kissinger Institute on China and the U.S. Additionally, I would like to recognize several Wilson Center supporters who are here with us today and whose generosity has made our Pakistan Initiative work possible. They are Munir Mashukula and Fazal Sirhandi. Thank you very much. The U.S.-Pakistan relationship is one that is currently trying to find its place, both bilaterally and in the world. Bilaterally, it's a relationship seemingly in search of a new identity, in search of new pillars to define it now and in the future, in the aftermath of the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan, which will be marking its third anniversary in August. The U.S.-Pakistan relationship is not presently experiencing any major crises or tensions, and in fact, of late, there's been ample dialogue on issues of common concern, such as climate change, through the U.S.-Pakistan Green Alliance framework, and counterterrorism through a counterterrorism dialogue. Both sides have also identified trade and investment as areas to explore for deeper partnership, but the relationship is still struggling to solidify new and enduring spaces for cooperation. Meanwhile, the relationship is playing out against an increasingly volatile and complex world order, one that features intensifying great power competition, mainly driven by U.S. competition with China, of course, one of Pakistan's close allies, two major conflicts in Ukraine and Gaza, and growing instability in the Middle East. How U.S.-Pakistan relations fit into all of this is a question that remains unclear. Today's conference, which follows on from another event on U.S.-Pakistan relations that we hosted here last year, looks to unpack all of this, to take stock of the relationship today, and to discuss how the relationship can realistically be crafted now and in the future. There are several core questions that we hope will drive our discussions today. These include, how can experiences from the recent past help guide policymakers working on the relationship today? How can and should the relationship recast itself post-U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan, and how should it fit into broader foreign policy and grand strategy goals? How can the Pakistan diaspora and other non-government actors help bring more strength to the relationship? So the conference today will feature an opening keynote session, two panel discussions, and a closing keynote. We will have several brief breaks, and my plea to you is to please return to your seats when the break time is done to ensure we stay on time and give full attention to our speakers. And your reward, for those of you here with us in the auditorium, is an informal lunch in our dining room after the conference concludes. So I'd like to now say that we're delighted to be partnering on this conference with the International Academy of Letters, USA. This follows a similar collaboration that we did for our conference last year on the future of U.S.-Pakistan relations. And so I'm very grateful to Gazanfar Hashmi, my friend, who heads the Academy of Letters USA for this second collaboration. Gazanfar is a Pakistani-American poet and author. He's published books on poetry and a new book on American exceptionalism. He and his organization have the admirable goal of promoting cooperation through dialogue, the arts, and diplomacy. His organization also has a strong network of Pakistani diaspora leaders around the U.S., some of whom we've been able to draw on for these conferences, including the one today. So I'm going to pause now and invite to the stage for some brief opening comments Gazanfar Hashmi.
Excellency Masood Khan, Pakistan Ambassador to the United States of America, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. On behalf of International Academy of Letters, I welcome you to this second annual Pakistan conference. This conference has become an annual signature event for us. Last year in April 2023, the first Pakistan conference was held here in the same splendid hall of the Wilson Center in partnership with the South Asia Institute, Wilson Center. The timing of today's conference is critical. After the general elections in February 2024 in Pakistan, the new government is in place and the journey toward political and economic stability has started. And here in the USA, some months from now, the American nation will also be well prepared to vote in presidential elections. Ladies and gentlemen, for more than 2 decades, Pakistan-USA relations have only been understood through the lens of Afghan war and seen as security-centric and transactional. But now, the international political dynamics have changed. Great power politics has pushed players like Pakistan to leverage its unique geostrategic position while balancing its relationship with all great powers simultaneously. It is a time to see these relations through the lens of new priorities to be set by the short and long-term interests of both countries, I mean Pakistan and USA. It is an undeniable fact that governmental relations can be strengthened only by fostering ties between the people of different countries. Public diplomacy is the soft power that can influence international affairs through cooperative strategies involving political ideas, cultural values, and economic and social norms. It can transform Pakistan-USA relations and establish an enduring partnership, and that does not depend on transactional exchanges in response to specific events or crises. By facilitating dialogue and cultivating relationship between citizens of both nations, public diplomacy assures linkages between the United States and Pakistan that can persist even when government-to-government relations are not good. It is a time for citizens of both countries to reframe the US-Pakistan partnerships and understand that our shared objectives and mutual ambitions go much deeper. There is a need to engage lawmakers, media, influential groups, think tanks, and cultural organizations and create an environment that can help achieve the foreign policy goals of Pakistan and USA. A strategic dialogue on Pakistan-USA relations can help bridge the gap between policy and diplomacy and mitigate the trust deficit between them. Ladies and gentlemen, International Academy of Letters is a Houston-based non-profit, non-political, and non-partisan think tank organization working to build bridges among nations and communities through dialogue on art, literature, politics, diplomacy, and culture. It organizes conferences, forums, seminars, and festivals, and is actively engaged in strengthening Pakistan-USA relations through dialogue and diplomacy. The main objective of this conference is to discuss the new dynamics of relationship and explore the opportunities for investment in Pakistan and strengthen bilateral relations through trade partnerships and cultural exchanges by engaging businessmen, investors, experts, and scholars. Insightful panel discussions at the event will focus on investment potential, economic growth, security cooperation, climate change, and people-to-people ties. I am grateful to my friend Michael Kugelman, Director of South Asia Institute Wilson Center, who has again provided us with an opportunity for partnership in organizing this conference. I am also thankful to our keynote speakers, Excellency Masood Khan, Pakistani Ambassador to the United States, Ambassador Sada Kambar, former US Special Envoy to the OIC, and all honorable panelists today for accepting our invitation and gracing this occasion. I am sure that this conference will help in identifying the ways for broader cooperation between the two countries in the fields of trade, investment, education, culture, IT, climate change, and energy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So let's now move into our opening keynote session. And our speaker, as you know, is Ambassador Masood Khan, Pakistan's ambassador to the US. That is his current post. Before that, he was president of Azad Jammu and Kashmir, Pakistan-administered Kashmir. He was also previously Director General of the Institute of Strategic Studies, Islamabad. His earlier diplomatic posts include Pakistan's ambassador to China, Pakistan's ambassador to the UN, and also the spokesperson of the Pakistani Foreign Affairs Ministry. Earlier in his diplomatic career, he also served in the Netherlands and also in Washington, D.C. So, Ambassador Khan, I invite you to the podium.
Good morning, everybody. And assalamu alaikum. Mr. Michael Kugelman, other guests who are here, Mr. Munir Mashuqullah, Mr. Fazal Sarhandi, and Mr. Gazanfar Hashmi, ladies and gentlemen. I thank Mr. Michael Kugelman and Mr. Gazanfar Hashmi for convening this conference on the present and past of the Pakistan-United States relations. I'll also focus on the present of this relationship as well. Mr. Kugelman, you are a respected voice and you have many admirers and friends in Pakistan. Mr. Hashmi, thank you so much for the useful work that you've been doing. And these conversations organized by the Wilson Center are very helpful in policy making and finding the right direction. The prospects of Pakistan-United States relations are bright. We share values, our security and economic interests are interwoven, and it is the aspiration of our two peoples that we strengthen our ties. In the past, our two nations have leveraged their bilateral relationship for their respective strategic interests. We have a history of cooperation which provided crucial military and economic assistance to Pakistan during the nascent phase of its statehood and contributed to significant advances in defense, agriculture, industry, communications, education, healthcare, and technology. The relationship also helped the United States achieve its strategic goals in our immediate neighborhood and Eurasia. We've been partners, great partners, in U.S. peacekeeping. So there are many bonds that join us. Now, in the midst of shifting geopolitical sands, we are developing a practical roadmap that enables us to deepen our understanding and deliver security and prosperity for all. The lessons we have learned during the Cold War and afterwards are that we should not base our engagement on incongruity of expectations. Our ties should be anchored in ground realities, even as we aim for stronger security and economic partnerships. Secondly, one or two issues should not hold the entire relationship hostage. We should be pragmatic, given the complexity of the emerging world order. In this era of renewed strategic competition, the United States and Pakistan would build on existing partnerships and explore new horizons for establishing the parameters of mutuality of interests. Pakistan is a large and vital state, both geoeconomically and geopolitically. It is one of the most consequential countries in West Asian hemisphere. Pakistan is the fifth most populous country with a population of 240 million and a median age of 22. It is a huge market of growing middle class of 80 to 90 million people, according to the United Nations Development Program. Human capital is increasing fast to be absorbed by the domestic and international markets. There are nearly 200 million mobile telephone users in Pakistan, and 135 million are broadband subscribers. Teledensity is more than 83%. Globally, Pakistan has the fourth largest cohort of freelancers. Digitization and e-commerce are transforming the traditional economy. We are also introducing the whole range of new technologies: generative AI, quantum computing, robotics, blockchain, 3D printing, virtual and augmented reality, Internet of Things, biotechnology, nanotechnology, you name it, in universities, industry, and markets. Since August 2021, following the withdrawal of the United States and its NATO allies from Afghanistan, our two countries have been recalibrating bilateral ties. Both sides have realized that security and non-security relations must be continued in a new paradigm, which has three features: security, economic, and strategic. Security cooperation has its importance. It equals trust building. Defense talks between Pakistan and the United States post-Afghanistan have continued apace. Pakistan and the United States military leaders have had frequent contacts in the past 2 years. Last year, our Chief of Army Staff held important talks with his counterparts in Washington, D.C. on the regional security developments and defense cooperation between Pakistan and the United States. 2 mid-level structured defense dialogues have already taken place. Intelligence cooperation between the two countries has been discussed at the highest level. Last month, General Kurella, commander CENTCOM, after concluding his visit to Pakistan, said that the United States look forward to continuing to strengthen 7 decades plus US-Pakistan military-to-military partnership. Also in the last month, naval forces from Pakistan and the United States held a 4-day capstone exercise, Inspired Union 2024, in Karachi, Pakistan, to enhance maritime security and promote freedom of navigation in that region. Pakistan Air Force and the United States Air Force held 2-week-long exercise, Falcon Talon, to develop interoperational capabilities, the first such exercise since 2019. We also have a standing agreement on communication interoperability and security between Pakistan and the United States. Military trainings are taking place under IMET. Exercise Red Flag provides another medium for furthering defense cooperation through training. Even after the departure of the United States and its NATO allies from Afghanistan, the threat of terrorism rages unabated against Pakistan, with the resurgence of Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan and Islamic State Khorasan. We have continued dialogue and cooperation within this field. In May this year, we had a comprehensive dialogue in Washington, D.C. on working together to eliminate the scourge from our region. We have launched a new operation, Azm-e-Istihkam, or Resolve to Stability, Resolve to Enduring Stability, to oppose and dismantle terrorist networks. For that, we need sophisticated United States small arms, ammunition, and communication equipment. Over the decades, we have evolved an interface between Pakistan and the United States businesses. Therefore, economic and trade relations between our two countries have assumed their own importance and must continue to be nurtured. That's why both sides have invested political will, time, and energy for promoting cooperation, trade, investment, energy, agriculture, climate change, healthcare, science and technology, and education. In the past 2 years, there has been considerable momentum in all these areas. Some 83 American wholly or majority-owned U.S. subsidiary firms, mostly Fortune 500, are doing business in Pakistan successfully. They have invested billions of dollars and earned billions at a high profit rate in Pakistan. These enterprises cover a wide range of sectors, including beverages, pharmaceuticals, food and hospitality, franchises, ICT, chemicals, agriculture, financial services, and renewable energy. The United States has a strong and enduring investment infrastructure in Pakistan, and its companies are fully familiar with the business ecosystem in Pakistan. For them, Pakistan's market has remained lucrative and attractive. The United States International Trade Administration finds the following positives for U.S. investors in Pakistan: lack of shareholding restrictions, simple work permit rules, no technology transfer requirements, and a large and sophisticated entrepreneurs class. As I speak to you, we are undertaking following regulatory reforms to improve ease of doing business. These are intellectual property promotion and protection and enforcement, assured repatriation of funds, removal of bureaucratic bottlenecks, dispute resolution through application of the rules of LCIA, London Court of International Arbitration, and UNCITRAL. At the same time, we have embarked on a three-pronged macroeconomic reform to streamline our taxation, make energy sector more efficient, and privatize non-performing state-owned enterprises. The United States-Pakistan trade has been growing over the years. Last year, this volume was $10.6 billion, with Pakistan's exports at $8.4 billion, making the United States the largest export destination for Pakistan. Our exports included IT products worth $1.4 billion. A reduction in tariffs on textiles in particular, and restoration of the generalized system of preferences can help us increase two-way trade between our two countries. There is some movement in Congress on the restoration of GSP. And Pakistan is a member of 26 countries that are lobbying for restoration of GSP on the Hill. Our economy experienced turbulence in 2022 and 2023 because of the pandemic, the floods, and the supply chain disruptions caused by the Ukraine conflict. This year, our macro and microeconomic situation has improved. We have turned a corner. There are many contributory factors. Last year, we successfully negotiated and completed a $3 billion standby arrangement with the International Monetary Fund. Now our financial teams are holding staff-level talks with IMF for the next multi-billion, multi-year extended fund facility. In 2024, the GDP growth rate will bounce back to 3.6% and hopefully rise to 5% in 2025. Inflation has gone down to 11.8% from the high 30s last year. The Pakistani rupee is recovering. We are receiving strong support from the World Bank, the International Finance Corporation, and the International Monetary Fund for economic reforms, investments, and macroeconomic stability. There is more good news. Recently, the Pakistan Stock Exchange has peaked at all-time high of 78,000, making it the fastest growing and the best performing stock exchange in the world. Remittances by overseas Pakistanis made through Roshan digital account have surged to $8 billion. The majority of the depositors in this account are US-based diaspora. General remittances from the US-based diaspora of Pakistanis last year was $3 billion. Fitch and Moody's have given favorable reports on ongoing fiscal consolidation in Pakistan. Pakistan is inviting fresh investments in the IT, energy, agriculture, and mineral sectors. A new entity, Special Investment Facilitation Council, has been created, as one-stop shop to facilitate foreign inflows. A vast array of incentives is being given in these areas. The most mature sector, I would say, for enhanced investment in Pakistan is tech startups, backed by international venture capital funding, the bulk of it flowing in from the United States. Following the introduction of new electronic money institutions, digital banking licenses, and e-wallets, there has been a meteoric rise in the tech sector returns from US dollars 10 million in 2018 to $4 billion this year. And this, I would say, is just the beginning. Other areas ripe for investment are green energy, corporate farming, and minerals extraction. Pakistan has proven reserves of critical minerals. These include gold, copper, lithium, rare earth elements, cobalt, chromite, bauxite, and nickel, among others. We are grateful to the United States for associating us with the recent forums of the Minerals Security Partnership. The SIFC prioritized projects have opened up new opportunities to United States technologies in agriculture, ICT, and mining projects. We're grateful to the United States International Development Finance Corporation, DFC, in investing in renewables and climate-resilient growth. It, along with USAID, can help us promote more inclusive development powered by sustainable green technologies and reliable supply chains. The United States-Pakistan Green Alliance provides an excellent framework to work jointly on climate resilience, water conservation and efficiency, high-yield seeds, and energy transition. Pakistani students and professionals value U.S. education. We appreciate the gradual increase in our students in the United States universities. These numbers ought to be increased. Pakistan is the largest recipient of Fulbright scholarships. Our alumni network is nearly 40,000. We welcome the launch of a US-supported program for the improvement of higher education system in Pakistan to enhance the employability of graduates. Beyond formal education, we want our civil servants, technocrats, and entrepreneurs to get training in US institutions to build and run their businesses and enterprises. In the health sector, we look forward to the establishment of a Center for Disease Control in Pakistan with the help of the United States Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, promote maternal and child health, press ahead with immunizations, fight non-communicable diseases, and explore health tourism. We are preparing for the next round of health dialogue in Washington, D.C. later this year. I agree that the primary onus is on Pakistan to become a more attractive and competitive market for the United States businesses. At the same time, the United States should use its enormous enabling power to help Pakistan achieve this objective. The United States government and private sector will be key catalysts in this endeavor. Pakistani Americans are a shared asset for Pakistan and the United States. Their number, nearing 1 million, is a matter of pride for the people of Pakistan. They excel here, build bridges between our two nations, facilitate two-way commerce and direct investment to Pakistan in key sectors. 11 of them are in the state assemblies. Many more are contesting elections this year. A few head top American franchises. They have immense space and potential to grow in the United States. Mr. Kugelman, ladies and gentlemen, regional stability is our shared goal. When it comes to China, Our posture is neither one of strategic autonomy nor of strategic neutrality, but one that may be called our strategic dyad model, which has been chosen by major countries in Global South. Pakistan is not an exception. The United States and China both are important to Pakistan in their own right, none at the expense of the other, because we believe these are not conflicting goals or affiliations. Despite apparent differences, there is broad complementarity between the United States and China. We too can benefit from this symbiosis. Besides, neither the United States nor China have asked us to choose sides. Not so far, anyway. Pakistan became a strategic bridge between the United States and China in the early 1970s. Now we can be an economic conduit between the two countries. The China-Pakistan Economic Corridor can connect the Belt and Road Initiative with the US-led Partnership for Global Infrastructure Investment. The United States could start new manufacturing plants in Pakistan whose products can be exported to Central, West, and East Asia, including China. The United States has competitive edge in so many areas. And to start new projects in Pakistan, it can partner with the Gulf countries, Japan, and South Korea, for instance, who have wide market exposure in Pakistan and who enjoy the trust of the United States. In 2022, both sides took a conscious decision that Pakistan and the United States would develop their broad-based relations without using the lenses of Afghanistan, India, and China. This also necessitates that we do not foist on this relationship a new prism, a new rehyphenation, such as the Indo-Pacific strategy. The Indo-Pacific strategy should not become a vehicle to accentuate regional imbalances. It should not become an albatross around the necks of the countries like Pakistan. A study needs to be conducted to assess the impact of IPS on countries not part of this group. Pakistan has always been keen on dialogue with India to resolve outstanding problems, such as the Kashmir dispute, so that our two nations can live in peace and harmony for centuries to come. Elections in two countries, recent elections in the two countries, should offer a new opening for diplomacy. The United States should make Pakistan a partner for a diplomatic comeback in Kabul, if that is what is being planned, and work with Pakistan in an inclusive setting on counterterrorism and the rights of women and girls in Afghanistan. Pakistan has been advocating for Afghanistan's stability and its integration into the international community. Stability in Afghanistan will open the gates for Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan gas pipeline. The good news is that the World Bank has approved support for CASA 1000. From my point of view, it's a great breakthrough. Let's prepare for the completion of this project. Ladies and gentlemen, the world is looking towards the United States to demonstrate its leadership to effectuate a permanent ceasefire in Gaza, ensure uninterrupted, fully functioning humanitarian corridors to Gaza, and develop consensus around a two-state solution. I'm grateful to the United States think tanks who are reshaping the policy landscape for a new phase in Pakistan-United States relations, focused on the positives rather than the negatives. The Wilson Center is one of them. And I have benefited immensely from your valuable commentaries and inputs. We should continue to invest in the reset of our relationship, maintain strong security links, enhance intelligence cooperation, resume sales of advanced military platforms and sustainment of Pakistan's US origin defense equipment. This is crucial for regional security and opposing the rising tide of terrorism that also threatens the interests of the United States and its allies. In a highly polarized and distressed world, the United States is looking for new friends. It is equally important to preserve its ties with the ones who have been with Washington steadfastly in difficult times over the decades. Pakistan has a strong stake in this. Our relationship will thrive on the basis of deep relations between our two people and the positive perceptions about each other. Both sides are working on these dimensions by leveraging public diplomacy and people-to-people exchanges. For this, we need liberalized and speedy visa regimes on both sides. To all my friends who are present here today and who may be listening in, have faith in Pakistan. As a nation, we'll make it. We will succeed against all odds. My confidence stems from the genius of our people. So my key message to all of you, to the wider audience, is invest in Pakistan-United States relations. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, thank you very much, Ambassador Khan, for a very comprehensive and eloquent presentation. I'd like to ask you two questions, I think, before we open up briefly to the audience. The first one is that you have been here in Washington for a few years now. You know the city well, and of course you've served here previously as well at the embassy. So I'd be curious to hear your views on the current environment in Washington when it comes to U.S.-Pakistan relations. And I should say, we, of course, had a House resolution passed last night that overwhelmingly calls for an investigation into Pakistan's election. That's part of the environment. So I'd be curious to hear your views, first of all, if you'd like to share on that resolution. But more broadly, can you talk to us about how you are navigating Washington today to advance U.S.-Pakistan relations?
Well, the resolution was tabled last year on November the 30th, and an amendment was introduced later on, and it was adopted by the House Foreign Affairs Committee on March the 20th. So it's not a new resolution. And since the House Foreign Affairs Committee had marked it up unanimously, it was a foregone conclusion that it would be referred to the House and that the House would adopt it. And this is what has happened yesterday. The title of the resolution is that it is expressing support for Pakistan's democracy and human rights. Who could vote against that? There were 7 congressmen who voted against that. And so this is one thing, and I think 56 did not vote. It's a big house. And we have taken note of what the Congress has said, or the House of Representatives have said, and we've been transmitting their messages to Pakistan. We've been meeting all congressmen who had signed up for this resolution, and we had an open-ended discourse on the subject. We also explained to them that against very heavy odds, in a very polarized atmosphere, in a very polarized polity, we pressed ahead with the elections. And we took democracy to all 4 corners of Pakistan, even to the most inaccessible areas. Pakistan is the 2nd largest parliamentary democracy in the world and the 4th largest overall. So, and it's not because we want to please this capital or that capital or one parliament or the other. According to our own constitution and the will of the people, we are committed to promote constitutionalism, human rights, and the rule of law. This is what we owe to the people of Pakistan primarily. So, but democracies are families. I mean, they can talk about what's happening in other democracies. And so we have taken note of this resolution. And I don't know whether you listened to the debate in which Congressman McCormick and Mr. Kildee and Greg Stanton, they spoke. They said have dialogue with the government of Pakistan. They also said that, at least one speaker said, that they were reassured that, according to Pakistan's legal system, allegations of irregularities and tabulation errors were being investigated.
Thank you for that, Ambassador Khan. One more question for you about another recent development in Pakistan this weekend. I believe it was on Saturday. Your government announced a, quote, reinvigorated national counterterrorism strategy. And there's been a bit of confusion about what exactly the strategy is. I know the government issued a clarification. So if you could very briefly describe what the strategy is, what are its key features, especially in terms of its non-military features, because as I understand it, it's meant to be very comprehensive. And do you see any possible opportunities here for cooperation with the U.S. with this strategy?
Let me respond to your second part of your question first. Of course, we had a dialogue last month here in Washington, D.C. on counterterrorism between Pakistan and the United States. All agencies and all departments of the government here and the counterparts in Pakistan, they participated in that dialogue. And it is our resolve that we would deepen and upgrade our cooperation. And as I said in my opening remarks, that even after the departure of the United States from the region, the threat is there of terrorism. And it also imperils security of the United States and its allies in the region. So we would continue, I can say very positively and confidently that we would continue to cooperate. The second is about the latest operation itself. It's not like Zarbayazb, which was launched earlier. It would not be very wide. It would be sharply focused on violent extremism and all manifestations of terrorism. So I think that it would be lean, targeted operation, and it would not be very widespread. And we have specific objectives, and we would like to achieve them, to neutralize terrorism and to stem all tendencies towards violent extremism.
Thank you for that. Very helpful. So let's open up things to you all. If okay with you, Ambassador Khan, we'll take a group of questions together and then come back to you to respond. So if I could have a show of hands, if anyone has a question, I would request that you keep your question brief and only ask one question so that we could take as many as we can. So do we have any questions? If not, while you're thinking, I can pose one more. Oh, yes, I see one back there. Yes, please. And if you could just wait till the microphone's in front of you so that our online audience can hear your question. And please identify yourself.
Ambassador Masood, this is Saman Izamani. I'm from InfraDigital, but right now I'm presently a visiting fellow at the Stimson Center. My question is primarily about the reforms that you've referred to. I've held numerous conversations with different experts, economists, but this budget did not really sort of reflect that kind of spirit of reforms. Again, we've sort of passed on the burden to salary class. No signs of passing the burden to landlords, or say for that matter, people who own real estate. So how do you sort of inspire that confidence that we are really taking our reforms seriously when it comes to creating that enabling environment? And secondly, my question is about Operation Azm-e-Istehkam. I do not understand how different is it from Raddul Fasad, which was intended to go down with that very same approach. In terms of countering violent extremism, what kind of initiatives do you foresee are necessary back home to sort of prevent incidents that we've seen in Sawat and other places quite very recently?
Thank you. Any other? Oh, sorry. Any other questions? Yeah. Okay. I see one right all the way in the back there.
But let me respond to this
Okay.
question because
Sure.
I'll forget.
Okay.
There are two questions.
ahead.
One is about the economy, the other is about counterterrorism. Economy, let me tell you that this is work in progress, that this is not going to happen instantly, but this is the resolve and determination of the government and the state, I would say, all political parties, in fact. They want to widen the tax net, and we want to bring untaxed and undertaxed sectors into the tax net. This is the determination, because without that, we can't make real progress, and we can't fix many of the problems that our economy is facing. So I think that this is a top priority for the government. Also, I think that we've had several conversations with the IMF, and IMF has also advised along the same lines. And in due course, we will have to come back to this, and this will have to be addressed. And I think that I was talking to the finance minister. He was here for the spring meetings, and talking to multiple audiences, he was reiterating this theme. So I agree with you that we'll have to fix this problem. Second is counterterrorism. I think that the comparisons with the previous operations would be inapt, because this is not an evolution. We have new situations. We have new threats, as a matter of fact. And as I said, that this would have 3 or 4 facets. One is, of course, the doctrinal aspect, because and Radd al-Fasad was all about the doctrine, about popularization of a particular philosophy to justify terrorism. So, and then there would the operational side. The operational side also, it would not be, and we're not talking about terrorism only. We're also talking about here, and I mean the details have yet to come forward, and we'll know more about this operation. But is to target violent extremism and militancy in different forms and manifestations, because these threats have to be addressed to ensure enduring stability in any society. The last aspect is, I would say, it is societal. It's not just the function of the government and its administrative machinery or the armed forces or the law enforcement agencies to bring this about. We need the support of the entire population. And because to promote tolerance, you have to take along all segments of society.
Thank you very much. So we have time for 2 questions all the way in the back. I'm sorry, we don't have time for more. The first one on this side of the room, and then the second question sort of on the other side of the room. Thank you.
Michael, Ambassador Khan, good morning. My name is Nikita. I'm based in Delhi, and I'm here in DC for the summer as a visiting fellow to Stimson Center. And my question is with respect to India-Pakistan trade, actually. I was very glad that you mentioned India-Pakistan trade in your remarks. When Pulwama happened and the trade got suspended, it was India which imposed 200% duty. And in August later that year, Pakistan suspended economic ties with India. And we have seen the kind of impact local economies have had on both sides, in India as well as Pakistan, post the suspension of trade. And my question here is that the narrative is that Pakistan says India should actually bring down the 200% duty for us to start trade. And India says it's Pakistan which needs to take the first step to actually reopen the trade. So in your opinion, where do you actually see a small reopening of India-Pakistan trade? Do you see any potential in this confidence-building measure? Thank you.
Which summer is hotter, Delhi's or Washington's?
All I can say is I'm glad to have escaped Delhi summer.
Okay, let me tell you, and you're here temporarily, or you're a resident here in the United States. Are you a resident in the United States? Are you an American citizen? You're a proud Indian citizen. Okay, let me address this question. First, it's not about Pulwama, it's not about trade, it's about 2019, as a matter of fact. August 5, 2019, to be very precise. when the Indian government decided to move into the Kashmir territory and deprive it of all its constitutional rights. Under the Indian constitution, of course, we have this position that the entire territory is disputed and that its future has to be determined in accordance with the aspiration of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. So it's about self-determination. It is about the rights of the Kashmiri people. Their population is about 85, 20 million. The population is 20 million, and it is 85,000 square miles. Not a small territory, not a small population. So that is the stumbling block. But in addition to that, and it sounds like an oxymoron, but India has also weaponized terrorism. Anything that happens between India and Pakistan, they say Pakistan is behind an incident of terrorism. Who proved definitively that Pulwama, Pakistan had anything to do with Pulwama for that matter? So, I mean, was there an investigation? Did we get together? So, this is exchange of allegations through the media or through statements given by politicians. We'll have to change this culture, sit together. As I said, that in South Asia we share so many things. I mean, starting from the culture and other linkages, ethnic linkages that people have. And therefore we should think long-term for peace and security in the region. And there you need statesmanship, not just diplomacy, not just behind-the-scenes talks. You need statesmanship, and you need the support of the people to resolve the outstanding issues and to move towards a better future. And we do have connectivity which has been suspended between the two countries.
Okay, thank you. We need to wrap up it very quickly. Yes, if you could pose your question all the way in the back, and then we'll break.
Good morning, Mr. Ambassador and Mr. Kugelman. My name is Marvi Sarma, and I'm from New Wave Global Digital Media Platform. Thank you very much, Ambassador, for your eloquent presentation, as Mr. Kugelman earlier said. And it was music to my ears to see you so supportive of human rights and democracy. However, my question is about the same. From Pakistan, we keep hearing the continued instances of enforced disappearances, especially of the Baloch and Pakhtun activists. We keep hearing about the persecution of journalists, of the dissenting voices, the intimidation of the politicians, and also now, very disturbingly, the interference of some state institutions, the allegations of the interference of some state institutions in the judicial process. Your verbal support is very welcome, but what is your comment on what Pakistani government is going to do? With special emphasis on the vigilante violence in the name of blasphemy, and Pakistani government apparently not doing anything about it. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to say that Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and the people of Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa are an integral and indispensable part of Pakistan, the state of Pakistan. And they are in the mainstream. They are in leadership positions, and Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa have been top priority when it comes to economic and social development in these areas. In democracies, you have dissent, and we do have dissent, and we have some groups who may have who have some complaints. But as far as I'm concerned, these have to be resolved by us, the people of Pakistan. I mean, these problems cannot be resolved in Washington, D.C. or London or Brussels, although we would heed feedback from our friends across the world. And therefore, we have to find an equilibrium within the polity of Pakistan. And there we have to demonstrate maturity through engagement. And whatever feedback you have, you can pass it on to Pakistan. If you want to share it with the embassy, we'll transmit it to Pakistan. If you have any specific instances in mind, we'll transmit them to Pakistan. The second part is that I've been talking to a number of groups here, small and large, about the abuse of blasphemy law. I was in Philadelphia talking to a large group of Pakistani Christians, 100 of them, and we had an interfaith dialogue yesterday at the embassy. Also, multi-faith delegation came to the embassy to have a dialogue with us. What I have been emphasizing is that there are laws on the statutes, and there are laws that have been passed by the parliament, and without the will of the parliament, we can't change them. And probably some laws are backed by the aspirations of the people or the belief systems of the people, but these laws should not be abused. And whatever instances that have come to our notice in the recent past, I mean, these ugly incidents, they were abuse of law. They had nothing to do with blasphemy. Many of them had nothing to do with blasphemy, for instance. And talking about the incident in Sargodha, I was telling people that, of course, I mean, there was this version which was given by the police and our administrative system. But at the same time, I said that read the report of the Human Rights Commission of Pakistan, because we also have a vibrant and vocal civil society. And they made certain recommendations. They also recognized that the police moved to that troubled spot speedily. So I would say that yes, this is something that I mean, this is also, the problem is not just legal or judicial or administrative, it is also societal, and we have to deal with it. And if you have any recommendations or suggestions, we would like to engage in a dialogue.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ambassador Khan. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your remarks. It's good to have you back at the Wilson Center. Thank you for your candor and your responses. We need to break. We will reconvene at 10:37. That's the goal. But first, if you could join me in a round of applause for Ambassador Khan. Thank you. Thank you very much, and we'll see you soon for our discussion with 3 former U.S. ambassadors to Pakistan. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone, and thank you now for joining us for our first panel discussion of the morning. Again, if everyone could take a seat. One of our goals for today's conference is to engage with some of those that have been in the policy trenches, so to speak, of U.S.-Pakistan relations over the last few decades. Again, if everyone could take a seat, we're officially underway here. So there's no better way to engage with those that have been in the policy trenches of U.S.-Pakistan relations than to talk to a group of former U.S. ambassadors to Pakistan. And so we plan to reflect on, not get bogged down in, but reflect on recent history in U.S.-Pakistan relations and draw on that as context for a discussion about where the relationship is today and how it should be shaped in the coming years. So we have with us, first of all, Ambassador David Hale, who I should say is currently a Wilson Center Global Fellow. He was ambassador to Pakistan from 2015 to 2018. Following his posting in Islamabad, he was appointed as U.S. Undersecretary of State. Earlier in his diplomatic career, he was ambassador to Lebanon, special envoy for Middle East peace, ambassador to Jordan, among other places, and he recently published a new book on Lebanon, which means he's very busy these days. We also have with us virtually, looming over us here, Ambassador Cameron Munter, who was ambassador to Pakistan from 2010 to 2012. He's presently a senior fellow at the Severo Institute in Prague, which is where he joins us from today. His past diplomatic assignments in addition to Pakistan include U.S. ambassador to Serbia and multiple positions in Iraq and Europe. He also served as an NSC director in the Clinton and Bush White Houses. And more recently, he taught at Columbia Law School and Pomona College and was president and CEO of the East-West Institute. And last but not least, we have with us Ambassador Ann W. Patterson, Ambassador to Pakistan from 2007 to 2010. Her other roles in government include Assistant Secretary for Near Eastern and North African Affairs and U.S. Ambassador to Egypt, Colombia, and El Salvador. Outside of government, she has served twice as a Jackson Senior Fellow at the Yale Jackson School of Global Affairs. So I'm going to ask a set of questions to our three former U.S. ambassadors, and I look forward to a discussion before we open things up to our audience. So my first question, and I'll pose it to you, Ambassador Patterson, first, is looking back on all of your time as ambassadors in Islamabad, when it comes to U.S. policy in Pakistan, what did we most get wrong, and what did we most get right, and what are any lessons of all of this for today? Ambassador Patterson?
Well, thank you very much, Michael, and thanks to Dr. Hashmi for sponsoring the program as well. I think this is a very timely discussion. When I was in Pakistan, I was there at probably a fairly unique time in our bilateral relationship, and our objectives were really quite specific, and that was to eliminate terrorists and to search for bin Laden, and to do everything we could to protect our troops across the border, which numbered at its peak 130,000 men and women from the U.S. and allied nations. So what did we get wrong? Well, I think it's almost a cliche to say that American involvement, excessive perhaps, focus on terrorism, led to a number of mistakes, but that doesn't make it any less true. We should have focused more on developmental issues in Pakistan, I think particularly on energy, electricity, although we were deeply involved in humanitarian relief at certain times. We also, and I was following the discussion with Ambassador Khan, Condoleezza Rice did everything she could to promote democracy in Pakistan, and I don't think anyone is naive about the fragile progress that's been made. But let's keep in mind that the resolution that was passed last night is really nothing new in terms of U.S. support for democracy and human rights. It's longstanding policy. And what was our big strategic mistake? I think our big strategic mistake, and frankly the government of Pakistan pushed us hard on this, was not to negotiate a settlement in Afghanistan many years earlier. We could have gotten a much better deal and a more stable government in Afghanistan involving the Taliban, the civilian government, and of course the government of Pakistan.
Thank you very much. Ambassador Munter, would you like to weigh in?
Sure. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Hello to Ann and to David and to you. Yes, I agree very much with what Ann said. I mean, my experience was somewhat different in the sense that what do we get right, if you ask this? During the couple of years that I was there, I think what we got right was we avoided catastrophe. A number of things that were the weaknesses of what we had been doing were difficult, from the Raymond Davis case to the fallout from the bin Laden raid to the Salalah incident, things of this sort. And so one thing during my time that I focused on, and that I think that our Pakistani colleagues focused on, was simply keeping the relationship from falling apart entirely, which was a real possibility. There were difficulties that came, such as the shutting of the supply routes through Pakistan. There were difficulties socially, there were difficulties economically. But I guess I'm most focused when I think of what we got right is that we kept at least a modicum of keeping things on track. What did we get wrong? I think Ann made a very, very important point. Had we worked in a broader way, focusing somewhat less on simple questions of counterterrorism, we might have had more success. But I do think that I was there during the brief era of Richard Holbrooke, and Richard Holbrooke was relying on entities in Pakistan that he believed would be partners and put a superstructure together of massive strategic partnership, etc. I think we overloaded the system somewhat. I think one of the things that we tried to do in that period was to do so much on so many levels that we didn't have, and our Pakistani friends didn't have the capacity to fix things. So a little bit more modest approach, which I would say is what we have now, is probably what was called for at the time.
Thank you very much. Ambassador Hale, you have anything you'd like to add?
Yes, thank you very much, by the way, for the invitation, and it's a pleasure to be here. I got to Pakistan at the end of 2015, and the relationship at that stage had largely run out of gas. We had stabilized it from the description that Cameron offered under my predecessor's term, but my most pronounced recollection of the period when I was ambassador, 2015 to 18, is one of unrealistic expectations on both sides about what the other counterparty could deliver. I think that, particularly on our part, there had been an accumulation of unhappiness in many of our agencies and personnel in the U.S. government about Pakistan, and a desire that Pakistan somehow play a more active and aggressive role in helping us achieve our goals in Afghanistan. But on the Pakistani side, I think there was an unrealistic expectation as well that the United States could somehow deliver on security needs for Pakistan based on the conduct of the war as we were doing it, which of course was unrealistic as well. And I think if you looked at the very top leadership in Pakistan, I'm speaking about the army, there was this continual dialogue back and forth between American officials at that level and him, in which my sense was that while he never said it, the Chief of Army Staff really was reluctant to go full in investing in the American strategy in Afghanistan because of the perception that the United States was not wholeheartedly committed to it. And bearing in mind that for 8 years, President Obama had spoken about a desire to withdraw. And there had been a very public discussion about our withdrawal strategies, a very public debate between him and his military command about the level of troops needed. And by the time I arrived in 2015, that debate had basically petered out into an inconclusive end. And our leadership, our military leadership in Afghanistan had looked to the Pakistanis to somehow compensate for the gap, and in particular to close the running problem of the Haqqani networks taking basically a safe haven or more in Pakistan. But I think the fault on the American side was not to recognize that we were not going to get a higher level of Pakistani exposure and risk-taking on our behalf and their behalf as well, without them understanding that the United States actually was going to had a strategy to succeed in Afghanistan. And by 2015, it was obvious that we did not. And so that was I think the fundamental problem that I encountered. And, we had our military commanders in Afghanistan who felt somehow that the Pakistanis could do things that we were ourselves unwilling to do. And that's never going to be a formula for success.
Well, thank you to all of you. Let's sort of move toward the present now, drawing on your comments just now. If you could offer your bottom line assessment of your bottom line assessment of the current state of the relationship, particularly relative to its state during the times when you were serving in Pakistan. And of course, all three of you were in Islamabad at a moment when the relationship experienced some significant challenges, but also some significant better times as well. So at any rate, Ambassador Mantra, let's go to you. What's your sense of the state of the relationship today? You're muted.
Is it okay now?
Yes.
Yes. As I mentioned before, I think that the state of play that we needed to have a more modest relationship, that has happened, not necessarily the way we wanted it to happen, but it has happened. And I think that if we compare our time, or certainly my time, to the present, that gives opportunities to focus on some other areas. Now, whether or not we are doing that is another question, given the focus of global American policy in other areas, as I think we'll get to somewhat later in our conversation. But the focal point that I was always missing and that I wanted to balance was to take advantage of what I consider to be, fundamental affinities that Pakistanis and Americans have for one another, and I especially mean in the economic area, business area, and personal ties that we have because of the distortions of what happened during the difficult years when I was there. We were unable to take advantage of the fact that our universities are the preferred partners of Pakistani universities, that our businesses have opportunities there that they often, because of fear of security, were not willing to take. That is, we didn't play what I consider some of our trump cards then. We have the opportunity to do that now. We can encourage people to do more business, as Anne mentioned, to do more development, to do other kinds of things. The question now, as I see it, is whether or not we're interested, whether or not the United States, both the government and the other institutions, is interested, because the Afghanistan war gave us a great focus. Other kinds of issues, I think, take our focus away. So I think I'm mildly optimistic that we have an opportunity now that we didn't take advantage of then. We have an opportunity to build the social and other kinds of links that we have. I'm not sure we're going to take it.
Thanks. Ambassador Hale, do you share that mild optimism?
Not wholly. I appreciate it. I hope it's true. Would it be so? That would be wonderful. Not to harp on the past, but I do reflect upon my tenure, and I was there when we basically ended the level of our assistance programs on both the developmental and military side. And no ambassador, no embassy likes that. Our aid is significant and an important tool. But I felt, frankly, it relieved the relationship of a major burden. Because again, the level of aid was such that there were unrealistic expectations on our part that aid would deliver policy results. And of course, no country, no sovereign nation is ever going to do things that its leaders don't see in their interests just because of an assistance program, unless they're so totally dependent on the donor, which is not the case of Pakistan. So there was constant friction over this and frustration on our part that despite the billions of dollars that were on offer, it wasn't changing policies. And so having that lifted off the back of the relationship actually was a relief in many ways. There are still good things we can be doing, but there won't be the kind of political support in the United States for high levels of developmental assistance or military aid, regardless. But there are things that we can do together, particularly in the counterterrorism field, where aid can play a role. Not to change policies, but to help the Pakistanis implement those policies that we both agree are valuable and important to do. And I cite the example for the Pakistanis' contributions to the maritime anti-piracy regime in the Indian Ocean and the Arabian Sea was quite valuable and continues to be an important contribution to stability and peace. So I would look for those areas where we have a common agenda and see what kind of resources we can apply to them. I would also make the somewhat gratuitous point, but we're a great power. We're a superpower. Pakistan's a medium power. Sometimes for lesser powers, it's not so bad to no longer be the object of attention. And so I hope that Pakistan can thrive in this environment. But another important part of the relationship will always be the availability of American diplomats and leaders to help Pakistan deal with and India deal with their problems and their relationships and their crises that come from time to time, as we heard in the earlier session. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. Ambassador Patterson?
Michael, when I was there, it was a time of what I would call high codependency. We were giving Pakistan about $1 billion in coalition support funds. We had a substantial civilian aid package under Kerry Lugar, which, as Ambassador Hale perceives, turned out to be a disappointment to both the U.S. and Pakistan. And he's certainly correct to say that people aren't for sale either in Pakistan or anywhere else. But we were totally dependent on Pakistan to deliver resources to our troops in Afghanistan, particularly fuel. There was a constant stream of high-level visitors. There was a constant focus on the search for bin Laden. And many years afterwards, it's really hard, I think, for people to remember how much that consumed the administration and our representatives on the Hill. But it was the first question that any congressional delegation asked me when they came to visit Pakistan. But I think the intervening years, and certainly in recent years, and certainly in the last 2 years, I think there was a great tendency to want to see Pakistan and Afghanistan in the rearview mirror. I learned in El Salvador it takes a long time to turn around the perception of the country. And you would hear Americans talk about, whisper really, that Pakistan was getting its just desserts for helping the Taliban, and their nuclear program was going in ways that we didn't like very much. But I have to give Ambassador Khan credit, and a couple people in the State Department too, who've tried to normalize this relationship in a very constructive way through counterterrorism dialogue, through military cooperation, through the trade and investment discussions that we had last year. So I think there's opportunity, it's as Ambassador Munter said, to turn this around, if it were to be more like a normal country with a normal agenda, and search for common ground, which I think is mostly on the economic side.
Thank you. So you all served at a time when Afghanistan was a big factor in U.S.-Pakistan relations, as we already heard you, all three of you indicate. So, the U.S. has, of course, largely moved on from Afghanistan, and there's a lot of talk about, this idea of moving away from an Afghanistan-focused lens in the relationship. But that said, do you think that there is still potential for U.S. cooperation with Pakistan on Afghanistan? And if so, what might that look like? So, Ambassador Hale, start with you.
Well, we could move away from Afghanistan, but Pakistan obviously doesn't have that luxury. So what is going on in Afghanistan still greatly affects Pakistan's national security and all kinds of other factors, including its economic health. I would say, I was Undersecretary of State during the Trump administration, but also for the first few months of the Biden administration when President Biden made the decision, I think it was in April, to pull out the troops, or to continue with the plan to pull out troops. But the hope then had been that we could keep an embassy going.
Yeah.
And that in my discussions anyway with the leadership, and I was transitioning out as well, but there was a hope, an expectation that Pakistan could continue to help us in trying to do whatever was possible to stabilize and achieve the principles of the agreement that Zal Khalilzad had negotiated. Obviously, that was no longer possible given the way events unfolded in the summer and the dramatic withdrawal of all American personnel. This hope had still been that we could, and I think the Pentagon and others tried to put a good face on things by saying that we would continue our counterterrorism operations against targets like ISIS that everyone in a responsible position agreed were legitimate targets. The reality, though, is that without U.S. personnel and intelligence sharing on the ground, we have not been able to fulfill that ambition. I heard retired General McKenzie the other night on the NewsHour saying that as far as he knew, there'd only been one American counter-ISIS raid in Afghanistan since the pullout. I don't have data myself, but I was struck by that. And so, the hope had been the Pakistanis could help us with this, but I think that was, again, an unrealistic expectation. There is still a need, though, to counter that threat. And while we've walked away from Afghanistan, that doesn't mean it's not going to come back and bite us. And so I think we should be doing, and I'm sure the administration is trying to do this, but everything we can to restore a high level of counterterrorism cooperation, even and especially when it comes to targets that we both are concerned about inside Afghanistan, knowing that there are still going to be limitations about what we can do. So that's, and I think right now, obviously, Afghanistan's not on the horizon in American politics or in our policymakers' view, but it could come back, and Pakistan could be an important partner in helping us both understand and shape those realities.
Thank you. Ambassador Patterson?
Yes, thank you, Michael. I had very similar observations. Yes, of course, there's potential for cooperation between the U.S. and Pakistan on Afghanistan, but our expectations of Pakistan, certainly right after our withdrawal, were fundamentally unrealistic insofar that we thought that Pakistan could get the Taliban to do whatever Pakistan said, and that's proven to be painfully mistaken. In fact, Pakistan has been a victim of terrorist attacks, both from TTP and other groups in ISIS-K into KP and other parts of Pakistan. But like the U.S. and Mexico, they're bound together, both by geography and by demography. And some people in this room may remember the free trade agreement that was negotiated in 2010. Trade is pretty minimal. And of course, that's not the real potential for trade is with India and not with Afghanistan. But to put more directly, I think what Ambassador Hale was saying, I think the U.S., despite the absolutely poisonous politics that are surrounding the U.S. relations with Afghanistan, it's time for the U.S. to open an interest section in Afghanistan so we can pursue our joint objectives like particularly counterterrorism, because every day that goes by, I'm quite certain that our ability to see and to know gets less, to open an interest section in Afghanistan so we can pursue our multiple objectives in cooperation with Pakistan.
Thank you. Ambassador Munter, thoughts on Afghanistan?
Well, I very much agree with my colleagues that the situation is extraordinarily difficult, and I'd add one other element that I think is important, which is that there was a focus during our time on that part of the world. Because the American policy is not focused on that part of the world, what will happen with Afghanistan and Pakistan will, I think, by necessity be derivative of how other kinds of policy decisions work. And I mean specifically, if we are able, as I think the Biden administration hopes, to have some areas within which we work with China, if there are areas that we can work together, that will allow us, I think, greater opportunities to try to find what I think David talked about and about the common issues that we want to work on. What are the kinds of things that the rest of the world, not just AFPAC, but the rest of the world wants to see? What are going to be the possibilities and the reasons why policymakers in Washington want to engage with Afghanistan, for example, to be as creative as opening an interest section or something like that. In other words, it's not the focus on Afghanistan, I think, that will be the impetus for this. It will be the focus on other issues where Pakistan and Afghanistan play a role. That said, my suggestion would be simply, we do have still, and we always have had, the ability to work quietly and effectively with many of our friends, whether they're in the Pakistani military or other areas. And I would not ignore that. I would try to be as honest and straightforward as we always have with our Pakistani colleagues in the military to try to say what is it that's possible and to find out whether specifically in that institution, whether some progress is possible.
Thank you. So security is a subject that was long a focus of U.S.-Pakistan relations. The Biden administration today, as I understand it, is keen to explore possibilities for more economic cooperation. But one could argue that Pakistan's current economic problems make that a bit of a challenge. How do you think U.S. policymakers today should approach security and economic relations with Pakistan? How to balance those two areas in the relationship? And what ultimately do you think could be some realistic, new, specific anchors for U.S.-Pakistan cooperation? And on that note of security, if any of you would like to offer any thoughts on this new or this revitalized Pakistani counterterrorism strategy that Ambassador Khan discussed before, that would be welcome. But main question here is how should U.S. policymakers balance security and economic considerations in the relationship with Pakistan? Ambassador Patterson?
Well, sure, there are security challenges in Pakistan, but my perspective may be warped because they're nothing like the challenges we saw from 2007 to 2010. Cross-border attacks have been increased from both ISIS and TTP. I think a number of people in this room heard General Munir when he was here a few months ago, and basically he said, yes, this is a problem for us, but nothing we can't handle. And I was certainly inclined to agree with that myself until I must admit I was unnerved at the highly specific U.S. warning about the Karachi hotels which had, I thought, great similarities to the warning about concert venues in Russia. So there are specific warnings that should cause us concern. I personally think a greater concern of investors is the sort of thing that happened in SWAT, where and Ambassador Khan spoke very eloquently about this, where a mob of extremists and crazy people really attacked an individual and then in turn attacked the police. And that's a societal problem, but again, it is much less when I was there. So to talk about the economy, I think the advances are fragile, but I think they're real. And I heard the finance minister speak several times when he was here a few months ago for the bank fund meetings. And I think there are turnarounds, potential reforms, and people are very skeptical about the reform process. But as somebody said, economically, Pakistan's back is against the wall, and they have they have to pursue these reforms to stabilize the situation. And it seems to me that that's going as well as one can expect in the early stages. So, of course, there are, as Michael put it, pillars. There's the Mineral Security Forum, which Pakistan has been invited to join. Pakistan has huge potential in mineral and rare earth production. There is consumer. It's an enormous consumer market, and when I was there, American consumer companies were frankly making money hand over fist supplying the market, and it's only going to grow, as Ambassador Khan mentioned, with the growth of the middle class. And I think the bilateral trade and investment framework has made some progress in resolving some of the trade problems that had evolved over years. It's exactly the market that DFC, the Development Finance Corporation, was set up to address, where it would advance America's strategic interests and make money for all concerned. So I think there are lots of opportunities for American investors there, and I think the security issue is a problem. But most of these investors are pretty sophisticated and I think used to dealing with security issues of this type.
Thank you. Ambassador Munter?
Well, I wholeheartedly agree with that. Last time I met with Ambassador Khan was when he was chief minister in Kashmir, and we both were visiting an American firm that is trying to do tech work in the health field in Kashmir. What I was most impressed by is that this is the kind of thing that is not only a question of volume of trade, but a question of transformation of the Pakistani economy. We still get more than half, I think, of Pakistani exports, or at least we double, I think, the next competitor of Pakistani exports. They tend to be very low value-added goods. They tend to be very, very basic things. There's a lot of brains and there's a lot of training and there's a lot of opportunity for American firms in the new economy to work with Pakistan, and I think a big hunger there for that to happen. It doesn't have to be splashy, and it doesn't always have to be something that the government runs, but the impetus for that has to come from business people in the United States who believe that the tales they've heard about risk or the other fears that are in the common kind of sense about Pakistan can be overcome, exactly as Ann said, that these people are savvy, they know how to do this, and that they move Pakistan forward. And this broad question gets back to some of the issues about governance in Pakistan, about some of the questions people have raised about the difficulties, the barriers in Pakistan to moving an economy that's based on cotton and agriculture and things of this sort into a higher tech economy. America can play a role in that, but this is going to take, I think, more than government to government assessments. It's going to be more than any kind of things that assistants can do. It's going to take business engaging there. So I would very strongly agree with Ann that this is the future if we can make it.
Thanks. Ambassador Hale?
Yeah, I mean, I that's all very hopeful. I wish it could come to be. I guess I'll be a little bit of a contrarian in that while Pakistan has huge untapped potential, there are reasons why it's untapped. And it is obviously an opportunity for us to sell consumer and other kinds of products to Pakistan, but that's only a superficial approach to economic development. And I think what Pakistan's looking for is actual investment in Pakistan. And if you look at such indices as the ease of doing business, the savvy U.S. businessmen that the ambassadors have spoken of are unlikely to be impressed by what they see. Pakistan is not a welcoming place for Western capital. And unfortunately, part of that is driven by imperatives such as the security situation that they face. And I'm not speaking about how that deters American investors, but how it shapes policymaking on the part of the Pakistani leadership, which still looks at things in a zero-sum equation with India. Instead of Pakistan's natural role would actually be as a point of transit. Geographically, historically, that's been the case. But it is unable to play that role because of the problems with India and inability to solve them. I'm not casting blame one way or the other, but the people who actually run the show in Pakistan look at almost everything through the prism of India and national security. And if that's the case, that may be contributing partly anyway to why Pakistan's potential economic development has not met expectations or its full potential. I would also say, Pakistan is one of the most IMF countries in the world in terms of the number of agreements it has signed with the IMF, not one of which it ever actually completed. Again, IMF doesn't have all the answers. IMF solutions are politically extremely difficult to sustain. But unless Pakistan actually is committed sincerely to the kinds of reforms that are needed to develop its economy and encourage foreign investment, all we're talking about, frankly, is wishful thinking and not realities. I would say that in terms of other pillars, I would go back to the reality that the United States has finite powers, finite resources, and our leadership, and I think it's a bipartisan perspective, looks at things increasingly through the prism of China and our competition with China. And Pakistan has made a choice. And again, I'm not criticizing it, but that is a sovereign decision that Pakistan made some years ago, that the main bet it was going to pursue was with China. And when I was in office as undersecretary, we looked at every country in the world and made a calculation, where can we make a difference in terms of competing with China? And the universal conclusion was that we could not make a difference in Pakistan, that it was so tied now in multiple ways into China and its so-called all-weather friend that it identified in Beijing, that there was no amount of U.S. assistance, and we had seen massive levels of this, by the way, that was going to change that equation. So those finite resources like DFC were going to be devoted to other markets and other places where the competition with China was actually a going proposition.
Thank you. Just a few more quick questions before we open up to the audience. Staying on this topic of geopolitics, the Biden administration has been relatively vague about how, if at all, Pakistan fits into the U.S. Indo-Pacific strategy. We heard Ambassador Khan before express concern about the policy. Do you think that Pakistan should be a part of the U.S. Indo-Pacific strategy? And if not, how do you think Pakistan should fit into the U.S.'s broader foreign policy strategy? And how should the U.S. approach Pakistan's alliance with China? I think we got a bit of a sense of that from several of you. But Ambassador Munter, any thoughts on the Indo-Pacific strategy and what that should mean for Pakistan, or how or if it should fit into that?
Well, I've been properly humbled by David Hale's realism. And I just have to agree with this. I don't think there's a whole lot that Pakistan can contribute to the Indo-Pacific strategy, at least the way that it's formed, especially if it turns out that the American Indo-Pacific strategy becomes heavily weighted towards military issues. That will make it even more difficult. That is to say, if it's really a question of containment of China. This is something, for the reasons David said, that Pakistan is unlikely to take part in and to be part of a team that does that. The India-Pakistan difficulty also makes this extraordinarily difficult because India is a pillar of the Indo-Pacific strategy of the United States. So I'm very, very skeptical about whether there is a way to integrate Pakistan into the broader parts of the Indo-Pacific strategy. That said, what I would think is rather than putting it in broad strategic terms, I would put it in more specific elements that you would look at what are specific things that Pakistan can do. I think Anne mentioned a few of them with Afghanistan. What are the specific elements that can, in the long run, contribute to our broader Indo-Pacific strategy, but not as part of an overarching kind of member part of what is going on in American policy in that part of the world.
Thank you. Ambassador Hale or Patterson, like to weigh in?
Yeah, I mean, I touched on this, but our Indo-Pacific strategies, and I do add a plural to the end of that, have many features that are very different than our approach, say, to Europe several generations ago. It's much more flexible. There are some alliances that are very strong, like the American-Japanese alliance, and there are other more informal networks like the Quad, which have been very useful in helping us build a cooperative and common approach toward the problems that China confronts us with. Pakistan will be part of the strategy. It's not as if it's going to be ignored. It's in the Indo-Pacific region, so it's got a role to play. I would hope that it will be a constructive role. But there are a lot of questions that are raised about the future direction of the China-Pakistan relationship and the rhetoric that's used about it, and particularly whether Gwadar will ultimately be a port for use by the Chinese Army, military, Navy. So which side are they on? And I don't think we should shut the door ever to any country, certainly not one as sizable and significant as Pakistan. But again, as Cameron said, we have to be realistic about what Pakistan's choices have been up to date. So I think that our energies are going to be more toward trying to change Chinese behavior when we can, exposing Chinese misbehavior when that is necessary, and blunting some of their threats when that's required. And I don't see Pakistan being a contributing partner on any of those fronts.
Ambassador Patterson?
Yes, I mean, the national defense strategy and everything else we put out reinforces that our first priority is defending against China in every conceivable domain. But it doesn't make sense to me to let the fifth most populous country in the world fall irretrievably into China's orbit. And so we shouldn't give up. China's always been close to Pakistan, as I saw many years ago in the UN system. I think the Indo-Pacific strategy, and David, of course, is right, there are multiple elements of this, is largely seen as a U.S.-led effort to counter China. And in that respect, Pakistan's not going to be interested because of its long relationship and the fact that they owe China $68 billion, of which the refinancing is going to be critical for any sort of economic stabilization. But of course, Pakistan should be part of our overall strategy on its own merits. And as we've discussed, there are lots of priorities: counterterrorism, stability in Afghanistan. Remember that there are a lot of new tensions in the region, too, that we didn't see 10 or 15 years ago, namely between China and India. And, of course, one that we haven't talked very much about, non-proliferations. So we need to develop strengthen our own bilateral relationship, quite apart from Pakistan's relations with China. And that, too, will, I think, because you hear Pakistanis say this a lot, that they want closer relations with the U.S. That will tend, I think, to at least to mute some of the Chinese influence in Pakistan.
Well, thank you. I have a few other questions, but I want the audience to have an opportunity to pose a question. So I think if it's all right with everyone, we'll take a group of questions and then we'll pose them. So we'll start at the front right here with Munir, and then we'll go from there. And please identify yourself, and everyone keep your question brief. Thank you.
My name is Munir Mashikullah. I don't know where I lost Cameron Munter. Is he in Prague, New York, or in close to Pomona College? So it's good to see you on the screen. Since I have a question that what would you have done different, and then to Ambassador David Hale, about Dr. Afridi, and what's so important about Afia Siddiqui? These things can be very good for optics, for the doc to come here and the other doc from here to go back, and with the influence, the implied influence which people think you have with Raul Pindi, why is this being such a stumbling block? And what would you have done different? I know Ambassador Munter, you didn't have the most easy time in Islamabad with Raymond Davis and, of course, the midnight raid. So what would you do different, or what should anybody do different to get this swap done?
Thank you. And let's next go a few rows back, right over here. The woman, yeah.
I want my question to be diluted, Michael.
Thank you so much. My name is Arifa Khalid. I've been a member of the parliament in Pakistan for 10 years. So my question is that how significant a role can Pakistan play in supporting the USA vision of global order? And as considering these autocratic states are tearing down the alliances which were already there, so how they can really play a role? That's all what I want to understand.
Thank you. Next question will be the gentleman over here.
Thank you. My name is Don Kirk. I'm a journalist. I spent a month in Pakistan a few years ago. I had the impression that we had, maybe not now, quite a large military aid program there, and there were quite strong relationships, sort of competing with the strong relationships with China. I wonder if you could discuss this competition for aid to Pakistan between the U.S. and China, with concern for the great road that China's built to the sea and the seaport that China's also constructing. A little more elaboration on the differences and the rivalry with China for Pakistan. Thank you.
Thank you. And one more question, the gentleman a few rows back with the gray jacket. Yep, thank you.
So, my name is Sajad, and I'm here in the US working on my completion of my PhD in Peace and Conflict Studies. And my question is about developing the strategic consensus, because now is the time that we have moved away from strategic balance in the region to strategic consensus. So in that context, everybody said that there have been frictions and unrealistic expectations from both ends. So especially from the military side, because there are divergent views, especially on the security and strategic issues between the Pakistan military and the US government and State Department. So having served in the Pakistan military for 15 years and later in the United Nations and now doing PhD, I understand that there is a need to, if we want to go ahead and forge a strategic consensus, there's a need to engage more not only with the diplomatic side of the Pakistan government, but especially with the Pakistan military to address their concerns, especially the security concerns, whether it's in context of Pakistan and Afghanistan relations and security cooperation, whether Pak-China, especially Pakistan-India, and in the coming days, maybe Pakistan-Iran context also. So there is a need to develop a consensus, strategic consensus, and take the Pakistan military into that mechanism to address those security concerns, which the military has, and it has its own mindset, because there are divergent views. Once I compare now what is the military mindset in the Pakistan military, and then there's a diplomatic side. So what should be the mechanism to address those concerns, and how we can move about to create that strategic consensus? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Number of questions on a variety of topics. I open things up to the three of you to respond as you wish. Would anyone like to go first? Go for it.
Yeah, I don't want to address the Afridi issue because I'm no longer in government and I don't have to. So, And I also can't remember what's classified and what's not on this topic, so I'll defer to others on that. I certainly wish everyone well and hope that a solution can be found. I will address the military aid question. I don't know what year you were there. Certainly when I was there, it was one of our largest military assistance programs. It was very important for us to support the Pakistani military's strategy to counter terrorism. It was also important for us to be able to sustain access to Pakistan, both by land and by air. And so a lot of the assistance was designed to help the Pakistani military sort of sustain that U.S. access. Once the war in Afghanistan ended, a lot of the rationale behind that, of course, went away as well, but our assistance was cut even before that by President Trump in January 2017. Right after the new year, he tweeted that the assistance would end, and I was summoned to the Foreign Ministry to explain why. And it has not, to my knowledge, been restored. Whatever there is small potatoes. I would hope that there are ways, as I said earlier, we can find where we both have a common set of objectives, and a military approach can be a contributing factor to achieving those objectives, that we would provide the assistance necessary to facilitate Pakistan's ability to conduct operations to meet those goals. And I mentioned the Navy is one of them. Another important area is IMET, with the military education and training programs, which provide human capital in foreign militaries, exposure to the United States, our military, and our training. And that is enormously valuable. And even when a relationship is at its most tense, there are often bodies of students who have gone up the ranks in their militaries, ours and other countries, and they can still communicate to each other and still have a certain level of pride in their relationships. And that's very important in sustaining ties during periods of stress. I would say, if you talk about competing with China, none of what we were doing with the Pakistani military was really meant to somehow compete with China. I think the Pakistanis kept these areas of cooperation between the United States and Pakistan and China and Pakistan in very separate channels, and we had no problem with that because it was important for us in terms of trying to achieve our goals in Afghanistan. But today, I don't know why we would try to sustain a military relationship merely for the sake of having a military relationship or depriving China of even more influence and access, because it wouldn't work. As I said, if there are tangible goals that we can achieve through a military relationship, that's where we should be focused.
Thank you. Please, go ahead,
Yeah,
Ambassador.
when I was there, the military-to-military relationship was huge. I mentioned the $1 billion in coalition support funds. That was to reimburse the Pakistan military for their expenses in Afghanistan. It was basically cash. It was basically a check. That was apart from another military assistance program through IMED, as Ambassador Hale mentioned. And it was perceived then, I think, that one of the biggest mistakes the U.S. had made in the past was to cut off IMED and other sources of assistance for the Pakistani military. We had students at the officer school in Quetta, and we had on the embassy staff a 3-star admiral who had long experience in Pakistan and a 1-star special forces general. And we had a great deal of contact, the gentleman in the back, with the Pakistani military, both on the military side and on the diplomatic side, if I might say. They were pretty seamless relations. I can't remember the slightest discussion that this had anything to do with China. Although perhaps there was some about Gwadar, I just don't recall. It was seen solely in relations with the war in Afghanistan. And that's mostly disappeared now, or entirely disappeared as far as I know. So yes, I'm sure that we have less contact with the Pakistani military. The people that we have there now have less rank, which is always an issue, of course, in any military-to-military relationship. And I too think that we would, no doubt we're seeking to cooperate on counterterrorism and some other areas, but it needs to be specific. And we need, of course, in my view, to continue the training programs, which are absolutely vital in increasing understanding and long-term relationships between the two militaries.
Thank you. Ambassador Munter?
Yeah, if I could just make a comment. First of all, Munir, good to see you again. And, what would we do differently? Well, I think we've assessed that, there were a lot of assumptions on both sides that were unrealistic. If I could magically rebuild or redefine some of the assumptions about what we were going to do, things might have worked out with less stress. But it's very, very hard counterfactually to guess on that. And let's remember on China that, this was also a different time in the American expectation and hopes for China as well. I mean, the Chinese ambassador, when I was there, was someone with whom I had actually quite close contact, and actually on one occasion went in to see people in the foreign ministry with him to talk about, why Pakistan is so lucky to have the two of the most powerful friends in the world. Wouldn't you like to work on X? I mean, we actually at times were able to work with our Chinese colleagues in a way I don't think we are now. So that background has changed and made the prospect for mil-mil relationships much more difficult.
Thank you. Before we wrap, I can't help but asking the three of you, this is one of the questions I was hoping to get into in more detail, very briefly, because I think this is such an important issue. How can the U.S. pursue people-to-people relations with Pakistan, given the challenges that are there, particularly the issue of anti-American sentiment? I would just, if the three of you could offer, this is hard to do in 30 seconds, if you could each offer a very brief take on that issue, because the people-to-people side of the relationship, I think we can agree is a very important one that I would argue has been overlooked and underplayed. But would any of you like to offer a quick view on that question?
Well, it's
If I could jump in.
Cameron.
Oh.
Sorry,
let me
go
just
ahead,
jump in
Ambassador
on quickly.
Montre,
Look, there is, when you talk about this question, as you say, Michael, it's a very complex thing. There's a dynamic middle class in Pakistan. And by middle class, I'm talking about people who are like entrepreneurs who live mainly urban. In spite of the massive poverty and other kinds of questions, there is a natural constituency among these people who open up franchises, who who admire American business practices. To me, this is a group that is our natural best friends. And if there's a way to try to get them, we have tried obviously through the diaspora, the many Pakistani Americans who are in, for example, banking or physicians or others who can deal with outreach to these middle classes. That, to me, is the most potentially fruitful group for people to people. Not government to government exchanges. I mean, they're important, but that there's not the money or the capacity. And I think looking to the very, very poor is also not something that is terribly effective. I think targeting the middle class and targeting those people in the United States who care about Pakistan, especially diaspora, is an opening through universities, through businesses. I would sure hope that something could be done.
Thank you. Ambassadors Hale or Patterson?
My personal view is that anti-Americanism in Pakistan is much exaggerated. Not that it didn't drive us crazy when we were there, some of the stuff that would end up in the press. But my own experience was that most Pakistanis want good relations with the U.S. and they want their kids to come here to school, and they want a positive relationship. And look at all the we had 500 last year, 500 doctors that got residency in the U.S. And this makes me slightly uncomfortable because it's brain drain, but there's no question that the Pakistani diaspora has become an influence, both in medical circles and otherwise. The Fulbright program, I think, has been a great success, and I wish we could get more American students back there to study in Pakistan, even though we have, I gather we have graduate students now. When I was there, the visa process, and we weren't supposed to talk about it, was a huge, huge problem. It was also a huge problem in the Middle East as young males from 18 to 40 were subject to much greater scrutiny if they were of certain religious persuasions. I think that's gotten a lot better, but it still can be a problem with these very long delays for visa approval. So there are things we can do to improve the people-to-people, but Pakistanis are very hospitable. The other thing, the U.S. Embassy is going to allow back adult dependents and go to longer tours. And I think those are reforms that are very, very long overdue after 20 years.
Thank you. Ambassador Hale, you've got the last word.
Well, I concur, and I think that the most important, although we, as the American Embassy and successive administrations invested a great deal in promoting people-to-people ties, frankly, the best thing we can often do is get out of the way. And as Ambassador Patterson mentioned, making sure that our visa process is keeping our country safe, but also functioning well so that we can have maximum educational exchanges, which I think in the long run are perhaps the best investment either of our societies could be making.
Well, thank you. Thank you to the three of you. This is a terrific conversation. I appreciate your candor. We covered a lot of ground. Thank you all here for your audience, for your questions, which were very useful. We're going to end this panel, and we'll reconvene in just a few minutes, 11:47, when we'll have our second panel session. But first, a round of applause for our former ambassadors. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael.
For organizing this conference and all these sessions. And this is the second year that we have successfully organized this annual Pakistan conference. In this session, we will try to focus on the economy of Pakistan, economic crisis of Pakistan, and what is the roadmap to come out of this crisis. Then how the Pakistan can leverage its geostrategic position in the region, and how it can balance relationship with the United States and China, and also what are the challenges and the opportunities of investment in Pakistan, and also lastly what the Pakistani diaspora can play its role to advance the trade partnership between the two countries. So these are the some points for these sessions, and I have very wonderful and renowned scholars and experts in this session. Let me introduce my panelists. Ms. Pam Constable is on my right side. She is a former Kabul and Islamabad bureau chief for the Washington Post, and a long-time foreign correspondent who reported from more than 40 countries since 1982. At the Post, she also served as South Asia Bureau Chief in New Delhi and reported from Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iraq, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Ukraine, Mali, and Nigeria. She also worked as an assistant foreign editor and a reporter covering immigration. She retired in late 2023. She is the co-author of non-fiction book on military rule in Chile and the author of 2 non-fiction books on contemporary South Asia. Her most recent book is Playing with Fire, Pakistan at War with Itself. She is a 2018 winner of the Arthur Ross Media Award from American Academy of Diplomacy and a 1993 winner of the Maria Morse Cabot Prize from the Columbia University School of Journalism. She is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations and a graduate of Brown University. My next panelist is Mr. Dr. Marvin Weinbaum. He is a professor emeritus of political science at the University of Illinois and served as an analyst for Pakistan and Afghanistan in the U.S. Department of State's Bureau of Intelligence and Research from 1999 to 2003. He is currently a scholar in residence and director of Afghanistan and Pakistan Studies at the Middle East Institute in Washington, D.C. Professor Weinbaum has held adjunct professorships at George Washington and Georgetown universities. He was awarded Fulbright Research Fellowships for Egypt and Afghanistan in 1989 to 90. Professor Weinbaum has his doctorate from Columbia University in 1965 and MA from the University of Michigan in 1958. My third renowned personality is Dr. Ishrat Hussain. Dr. Ishrat Hussain is a renowned Pakistani economist who served as the Dean of the Institute of Business Administration and the Governor of State Bank of Pakistan. He also served as the advisor to the Prime Minister for Institutional Reforms in 2018. He received his MA in Development Economics in 1972 from Williams College and his PhD from Boston University in 1978. He joined the World Bank in 1979, working initially as the country economist for Liberia. In 1994, Hussein became the chief economist for the Asia-Pacific region, and between 1997 and 1999 headed World Bank's operations in Central Asia. He ended his World Bank career in 1999 and was appointed the Governor of State Bank of Pakistan and remained until 2005. He authored many books on economy. The most notable are Pakistan, the Economy of an Elite, Governing the Ungovernable, and Economy Management in Pakistan. My next panelist is Mr. Shahid Hashmi. He is a renowned businessman, entrepreneur, and diaspora leader from Virginia. He is the managing partner at Pure Foods Managing Group and the president of First Health Bank USA. And my last panelist, he came from Houston with me. He's Dr. Asif Riaz Qadir. He's a renowned diaspora leader, physician, writer, and political analyst. He is the former president of the APNA South Texas chapter, general secretary of Central APNA, and executive director of the APNA Foundation. He gives analysis on the issues related to American and Pakistani politics on different TV channels. He is also a member of the advisory board of International Academy of Letters and chairman of Quaid-e-Azam Foundation. So give a big hand for our panelists. So my first question would be to Pam. I don't call you as a retired journalist because journalist never retires, I think. You retired from your service.
Well, I'm not getting paid.
So that's great. So you reported on Pakistan for a long time, and you saw the U.S.-Pakistan relationship in highs and lows in every phase of. You witnessed that. What lessons you draw from the relationship from your reportage, and what did you observe that worked well in the past and is worth looking at again now? And also, what are the mistakes and the failures you observed that we should be careful to avoid today and in the future?
This should be the subject of a dissertation. Is this on? Is this on or not?
It should be on. It's not on?
I can just speak. How about that? Is that better?
Yeah, this is good.
Is it working?
Yeah.
So this ought to be the subject of a dissertation. I, in fact, scribbled. It's not working.
So can you come?
Huh? What should I do?
This one is working, but that one isn't working. Sorry about that.
So I should not read, okay? So anyone can hear me? Can people hear me or not?
To the side so you can read it.
No, it's not working.
Not working.
It's on.
How's this? Okay. I'm terribly sorry. I'm going to have to leave very soon for complicated reasons, and I know we started a little bit late. I did take a lot of notes, and then my computer broke, so I scribbled most of what I was going to write. But actually, I had the most important thing Dr. Hussein mentioned, and I would quote it here, and I think it'll probably sum up everything. Pakistan is the kind of place where the more time you spend there, the less you know. Does that make any sense? It's a very, very, very complicated place, and I loved every minute I was there. Nothing bad ever happened to me in Pakistan. I learned an enormous amount and still, again, know very little. He asked me what was, when he sent me he said, what was your sort of your best and your worst experiences? Actually, my best experience was not in Pakistan at all. It was going with General Musharraf to Agra, where he was going to meet with Mr. Bajpai. And he was quite hopeful. You know, he had a quality of being sort of an optimistic person, even when it wasn't merited. But he really thought that there was going to be a breakthrough. And if that had proven to be the case, we would be having an entirely different discussion right now. As it turned out, for various reasons, of course, it did not work. And I saw him leaving in his car just after it all fell apart. And he looked ashen. He looked defeated. He had been outwitted. And it was it was terrible. I mean, I remember that so vividly, even though it was many years ago. You know, a place with so much potential. We all agree, a country with so much potential, but never able to really fulfill it. I mean, I literally have 5 pages of notes here, but I do have to go. I would say the most important thing is that, you know, Pakistan is a place with enormous potential in every way. It has everything. It has the motorway. It has an enormous amount of human capital. It has lots and lots of potential. I mean, someone was speaking about education. I mean, if you would just take a little bit off the military budget and put a little bit more in the education budget, you could do a whole lot with that country. Look at NUST. I mean, NUST has struggled and struggled and struggled, but they tried. They have been trying to get people out of the above the glass ceiling or the metal ceiling or whatever it is that keeps people in Pakistan from getting ahead, whether it's, you know, getting them from 3rd grade to 5th, whether it's getting them from 6th grade to 12th, whether it's getting them a scholarship at the engineering school in Peshawar, anything to get people moving up and not feel stuck. But that's not about international relations. It's about just observing and spending so much time and meeting so many people in that country for whom I could only wish a miracle would happen. And I saw it time and time and time again, and I wrote about that a lot in my book. I mean, I went to district courts and listened to people who'd been, what do they call that when they're in prison for a long time without being charged for stealing a bicycle? You know, I mean, it's not a failed state. It's a dysfunctional state. It's a state at war with itself. It's a state in which different departments are at war with each other, and it makes me so sad. And I'm sure, I mean, I see, you know, Anne is nodding. I'm sure she really, really cared, came to care about that country as much as I did, as much as many people who've worked there over the years. And just to see it, you know, fail over and over and over again for all the different complicated reasons we know. I mean, I think of, again, all the money that's been poured in there. And many people have earlier in this conference, the billions of dollars, the aid, the efforts. I mean, I'm all over the map here because I have no time. But I just think, you know, I'll tell you a sad note. It's a sad note. But it's a new one. I mean, Imran Khan, what a... I don't know what to say about Imran Khan. It's just too complicated. He blew it. It went, I don't know. Anyway, so if you remember, Shireen Mazari, this tough woman, one of the most tough hawks in the country, absolutely ultra-nationalist. I think she went to Columbia, but anyway. She did. Ultra-nationalist, a scary person. She even, when she was editing that newspaper, she actually put pictures of the alleged CIA officers' homes in the newspaper. A real tough nut. So, after Imran got arrested, sent to prison, and Munir, who was furious, brand new, didn't know what the hell to do except to just make a point, rounded up all of his top right-hand people. Shireen was one of them. When she came out of prison, she was a changed person. I've never seen such a transformation. Really? She was scared to death. Oh. That tells you something. And I wasn't planning to mention it, but it really stunned me. I was scared of her. You know, she's the kind of person you'd go to your office and she'd snap your head off. Things she said about America. Just really, anyway, I'm sort of, I don't know, you know, it's a love-hate thing. You know, it's a place you fall in love with, and then you just see it going, you know, over and over, shooting itself in the foot. I mean, you know, think of the headlines over the year. You know, Wall Street Journal reporter beheaded by a guy who apparently went to the London School of Economics. I mean, this is, you know, and students, I mean, think, you know, students, I was going to talk about student exchanges. I was going to talk about all this stuff, right, this positive stuff. So it was a guy who came as a student. His father was in the Air Force, officer, I think. He came as a student, graduated, got a job, and was working in some bank in Connecticut. But he also got sucked into the jihad stuff online. And he's the one that went to Times Square and tried to blow it up with fertilizer. So there's talk about shooting yourself in the foot. I'm talking about all the ways that Pakistan has tried, and all that. And that's why I just stopped reporting and wrote my book, because I thought, wait a minute. There's just nothing ever changes here. The things that really matter never change. And at that time, there was this Talibanization stuff going on, and I met so many young people, so many poor guys, and I always thought to myself, when you don't educate people, when you don't give them a chance, when they're stuck where they are, when they're kneeling all day, turning bricks in a brick factory, when they're sharecropping in somewhere in Sindh, if they're getting nowhere, if they don't have a chance, what's going to come of them? Two things: crime and jihad. That's simple. What are people going to do if you don't give them a platform, a way to rise? So, it's not just because, it's a sort of a quasi-military state. It's not just because it has a feudal elite. It's not just because of X, Y, or Z. It's because the whole situation has not really ever changed. The way things are done has never really changed. That's why they were so scared of Imran. But then he couldn't handle it, and it was very, very sad what has happened to him. And yet, got thousands and thousands and thousands of young people out there who still are very loyal to PTI. Let's see what's going to happen with that ever. I mean, I really can't talk anymore because I'm terribly late. But if I were to say what could help, I was going to say something funny, but I'm not in a funny mood anymore. But I'll say it anyway. Until a few days ago, my first thought for how to improve U.S.-Pakistan relations would have been cricket, because of the incredible surge of support for cricket in the United States. But then, most unfortunately, of course, it backfired because they lost. Not only that, but then they lost to India, which is even worse. I mean, it was sort of like this, I called it the ice-breaking moment where everything melted, So that was my first thought. My second thought, this is personally just my personal pet peeve, but if anybody here has any authority, please don't think that inviting rich Americans to go shoot endangered goats is a good way to gain American friendship. Just for my sake, don't do it. That's just personal. But there's a lot of stuff I want. I have 5 pages of notes here. I don't know what to do.
I'm happy that you at least
I'm honest.
given one good thing of cricket diplomacy. Other part is sad, I think. So
well,
when I
of course,
come again,
if there's one good thing. If it had been the Iraqi team under Saddam, they would all be dead.
okay,
Trust me.
okay, okay. Thank you,
You're welcome.
Kamila. So when I will come again on the second round, I would like to listen to good things also from you. Dr. Marvin Wainbaum, you study Afghanistan and Pakistan very closely, and you know that Afghanistan used to be a source of tension and source of cooperation between the two countries also. So now, today, with the American forces out from Afghanistan, what scope do you see, scope of cooperation between the two countries? And if so, how it would look like?
I don't know. No, I'm going to start off by saying I wish I were out of time and could speak as extemporaneously as Pam has. Whatever those notes were, I'm glad you didn't have to read them. Thank you. Yeah, well, obviously looking as the U.S. and Pakistan look at Afghanistan, they've got different stakes in it. Pakistan has a much greater stake, as has been pointed out. And by the way, I think that my question very much resembles one that the ambassadors dealt with, and I don't know if I can top that either. But Pakistan does see Afghanistan, in many ways, its northwestern neighbor, as holding the key to the dealing with its most direct security threats, both as it plays host to the Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan and in facilitating its terrorist operations, and in Kabul regime's perceived use of India, as have all Afghan regimes for 70 years, as a strategic counterweight to what the Afghans view as a overbearing Pakistan. Now, for the U.S., as much as the U.S. has tried to put Afghanistan behind it, it can't ignore the fact that it still has interests there. There's still a great deal at stake there. It can serve as we are, and that's the major reason, as a potential launching pad for terrorist groups like ISKP that could target not just U.S. security interests, but in the region, but globally. It has the need of the Afghan regime's cooperation and has had that assistance in evacuating those who would work for the U.S. government in one way or another. So in some ways, we have found ways to be cooperative with them. And I could say a great deal about how I believe. I think it was Ann who mentioned that an interest section there would be useful. I really think it's time for us to rethink our relationship with this government and the fact that it's going to be around for a long time, and recognize the disadvantages of not having an American diplomat on the ground there. Now, much of our concern there with Pakistan now is humanitarian. We're very much deeply involved in this. We're the most generous of the donors there. And we also indirectly, and this doesn't go down well in the Congress, indirectly we are helping the country to financial stability. But that's not just a matter of the regime. It's that hope here that if the financial system should collapse, this would have enormous implications for the working class of Afghanistan. So whether it's doing this out of a sense of guilt for having left the way we did, or a sense of responsibility, having left the country in that fashion. In any case, those are two examples there of how we continue to have an interest with them. And by the way, the one area which we've not been able to capitalize on now and is working with the Afghan regime in counterterrorism. There we have an absolute interest. It's an overlapping interest, especially with regard to ISKP. But the fault there is on their side. It's a fault, really, that both sides don't trust one another enough to be able to assume this function. Now, the U.S. and Pakistan do have differences on how to approach Afghanistan. And obviously, we've not been pleased with the way in which the refugees have been evicted from the country, undocumented and some documented too. And it's, of course, our humanitarian assistance there has helped alleviate some of the worst aspects of this. But we're mainly with Pakistan, we have an interest regarding Afghanistan is in intelligence sharing, and we are doing that. That's an ongoing thing that is happening. We're also, a while ago, revived our military training and also some equipment as well. So we've all in an effort, I think, to minimize the likelihood that Afghan soil will become the base for terrorist planning and operations. The U.S. is also concerned about Pakistan's domestic stability and the avoidance of conflict with India. It shares with Pakistan the desire that militant Islamic extremism not be exported from Pakistan. Neither the U.S. or Pakistan wishes to see a desperate Afghan regime fall under the strong influence of Iran. So despite these real differences and overlapping interests that we have here, the U.S. and Pakistan need and this I think is a very important issue, they need with all of our differences with this regime in Afghanistan, particularly on social issues, what we need is that this country, for the time being, remain politically stable and that it avoids economic collapse. To have it otherwise is to introduce uncertainties in the region that would come with what is inevitably going to happen, and that is a chaotic, rather nasty, more so than we even saw in the early 90s, civil war that could envelop the entire region and have consequences well beyond. So let me stop on that.
So, thank you. It's a good insight, and I will come again to talk about the great power politics in the region.
Yes.
Yeah. So now I come to the very important issue facing Pakistan, and that is the economy. So Pakistan is currently undergoing a very economic crisis, you can say. It's a bad shape of economy. So Dr. Ishrut Hussain, can you give us a sense of what will come in the days ahead for the Pakistan economy, and what should we do to improve these conditions?
Thank you very much. First of all, let me thank Wilson Center for providing this opportunity to present my views about the Pakistan economy. For this audience and those who are not very familiar with Pakistan, Pakistan was one of the top developing countries in the world till 1990. Its average growth rate of GDP from 1950 to 1990 was 6% per annum, while India was growing at 3% during that period. So Pakistan's per capita income was 70% higher in 1990 as compared to India. And Bangladesh at that time was just coming out of its own economic difficulties. But since 1990, we have really gone down. And today, both India and Bangladesh are ahead of Pakistan. And therefore, the question arises, in the same country, you have two different episodes of economic growth and development and economic decline. And what are the reasons for it? I have two books. One is Governing the Ungovernable, which traces typical Pakistan specific factors, and that was that it was the collapse of the institutions which were actually running the economy, which led to Pakistan's economic decline between 1990 to 2015 or onwards even. And the second book is Development Pathways, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, 1947-2022, where I show that India got out of the strangulated, over-regulated economic infrastructure to liberalize its economy, merge with the international economy, invite the foreign direct investors, and unshackle the private sector. And Bangladesh also followed the same thing. Now, the factor which has hampered Pakistan's growth are many, and I believe in multiple factors rather than a single factor identification. One, I told you, is the institutional decay. And that happened because in 1973, Mr. Bhutto, in his pursuit for social justice and name of socialism, demolished the civil service structure of Pakistan and diluted the whole backbone of administration by inducting people not on merit, but on different considerations. And this was followed in 1990s by the regimes of both Mian Nawaz Sharif and Bibi, that they brought in people who were not competent to run the institutions, but who were loyal to them. And that particular episode is very well documented. And that has continued even till today. The second factor was political instability. No prime minister in Pakistan has completed his term of office. And I just quote you a number. Between 1999 to 2024, Pakistan had 15 or 16 prime ministers. India had 3 prime ministers, Vajpayee, Manmohan Singh, and Narendra Modi. And Bangladesh had only 2, Khalida Zia and Hasina Wajid. So all the investors had a complete confidence that the political regime change will not result in the discontinuity or inconsistency of economic policies, because economic policies remain valid for a very long period of time. In Pakistan, when you are changing every 2 years, the prime minister is very much reluctant to take tough economic decisions because these are unpopular decisions, and politically they are going to harm him because he's not sure whether he will survive. He doesn't want to add to the risk of taking those tough decisions. And if you don't take those tough decisions and you appease the elite classes in order to survive, then this is what happens in Pakistan. And the third factor, which a lot of people in Pakistan believe very strongly, is that Pakistan's participation in the war against terror has led to the security problems. And compared to other countries, Pakistan does not provide a secure element for foreign investors to come and do business in Pakistan. So the political instability, the institutional decay, and the security problems have actually been responsible for the decline of Pakistan's economic growth. The only hope I have is that whatever the people may think about, we have to provide a 5-year assured guaranteed tenure to the parties who have come through the elections. Whether they have come through manipulation or they have come through other means, for the sake of the country's economic revival, let this government take tough structural reforms, not the short-term ad hoc reforms, not going to the IMF and filling in the imbalances, but tax the rich and the wealthy who are outside the tax net, set up your energy sector where the distribution companies should be completely restructured and privatized, eliminate all the subsidies to the middle and the rich class and target them to the poor segments of the population, reintroduce the local governments so they can deliver the basic services like education, health, and water supply to the masses of the population. And also, they have to get rid of the loss-making state-owned enterprises. These are tough political decisions, but if the government is able to do it, I have argued in my papers and in my talks that by year 4, the economy will start moving up the trajectory. And that will give a political dividend to the party in power, and they say, yes, you suffered the pain for the first 3 years, but look, those pains are now translating themselves into gains, and the country is moving in the right direction. Give us a chance to get reelected, and this reform package will continue, because no reform package will ever be coterminous with the 5-year electoral cycle. Some of the institutional reforms will take 10 years, 12 years, and unless you have a continuity of the policies, which will happen if you are reelected, then that is the salvation of Pakistan's economy. So I'll stop here, but I'll come back to other questions you may have.
So thank you, and excellent remarks and excellent response and the perspective. Dr. Ishrat, thank you very much. Let me welcome Ambassador Sada Kambar, former special U.S. envoy to the OIC in this conference. Thank you very much for coming. Dr. Asif Qadir, now I come to you. You have worked on health sectors, and you use the health sector to bolster and foster relations with Pakistan and between the Pakistan and the United States. So what Pakistan can offer to the USA to foster these relations, to further these relations in health and other sectors?
Before I answer your question, we definitely heard 3 former American ambassadors to Pakistan, their views, and the 75-year plus relationship that we analyzed one way or the other, either from the lens of Afghanistan. A question comes to your mind, if that has not worked for 75 plus years, we may have to think from a different angle. And I have lived here in this country 45 years. Every year, the perception of both countries, Pakistan and America, are deteriorated. People here in this country don't understand what Pakistan is. And in Pakistan, there is a different sentiment about America. And we have to start looking from a different angle, from different thing, a different approach. And the best approach is people-to-people approach. And the Pakistani diaspora in the United States of America, especially the physician community, the doctors, who have put down an extremely good impression in the United States coming from Pakistan. If you carefully see some of the leading people in this country, the political leaders, congressional people, their personal physicians are Pakistani physicians. And we have earned in this country a big name for Pakistan, but the common person in the United States does not have that impression. Therefore, people-to-people diplomacy, Pakistani diaspora, especially in healthcare, between Pakistan and America, would be a way to move forwards. We have not seen a single top medical hospital, American-based, in Pakistan. Whereas we in America and Pakistan, we know that the CDC and the different related diseases in the world, an institution setting up a research center which immunization in Pakistan, backed by the Pakistani diaspora, people to people, can go a long way in addressing the immunization problems in the South Asia, Pakistan, neighboring countries. And this will give a good impression of American investment in Pakistan, and the people who will deliver that thing will be Pakistan diaspora here with the economic ties from Americans to Pakistan. Similarly, the impression of Pakistanis in America has to change. It can occur with diplomacy, economic diplomacy, cultural diplomacy, sports diplomacy, which you have just seen in a match of India and Pakistan right here in New York. Stadium was full. And we didn't fight with each other. We hugged each other, we talked to each other, and we enjoyed each other. I think we need to move forward in getting the old ideologue behind us, because there's much more to be suffering. We need to figure out how the economic hitman can continue, making the underdeveloped country more weaker. And I think the medical profession, healthcare, doctors beyond borders, helping each other on the healthcare sector would be one catalyst where a lot of doctors, American doctors, can go there. American doctors can go into the medical colleges there to study. And likewise, many of the institutions in Pakistan can come here, which comes into the top 10 university of the United States, and have their exchange here. So I would say the maximum expense that we should put money in education, in exchange program. Therefore, people-to-people diplomacy can prevail. So the perception and impression of both countries in both should become better. That might be one way to move forward.
So thank you, Dr. Asif. Moving forward, I'm just focusing on the health sector. Mr. Shahid Hashmi, you are the first president of the first health bank of USA. So what do you think? What is the vision of this bank, and how this vision can boost the partnership between the Pakistan and the USA in health sector?
Well, thank you very much. The first health bank, which we are trying to establish right now, is basically to train medical care professionals. We have a critical shortage of medical care professionals in the U.S., even though we still probably have a lot more shortage in Pakistan. But what we are trying to do is provide them a platform and funding so that they could be trained in Pakistan and could be brought to U.S. in the healthcare sector. So basically our goal is to identify the institution in Pakistan who could provide some training, which we have identified a number of institutions in Pakistan, and we have been in negotiation with them to help and train medical professionals. Hopefully, once they come here, they could get a meaningful job in the U.S., and especially in the rural areas where there's a critical shortage. Even in the urban areas, there's a shortage of nurses here, for example. We could train nurses, midwives. I mean, there are a lot of physicians have been able to come here, but other than that, we don't bring anybody else from the healthcare sector to US. So that will serve two purposes. First of all, we will have training institute in Pakistan who will train people who could serve both Pakistan and the US, as well as promote Pakistan position in the US. So basically, that is our main goal, because one of the things we have to do in Pakistan is reform the education sector, because this is where the big problem is. If we don't reform the education sector, we'll breed all these extremists. And unless we do that, we cannot change the perception of Pakistan in the rest of the world. Because the rest of the world thinks we are extremists, we are fundamentalists, we are terrorists. How do we change them? We have to change. We cannot change them by lynching people in Sargodha, which happened recently. So those are the things we have to change, and we have to invest money in education, health sector, and rest of the education. If we don't do that, we are not going anywhere. Look at India. They established institutions in the 50s. The US is being run by Indian entrepreneurs. It's not run by Americans anymore. I mean, all the CEOs of big corporations are Indians. And we don't find hardly any Pakistani in a senior position in the corporate sector in the US. So unless we do that, we are not going anywhere. And again, and hopefully with our First Health Bank will help us to provide some base to educate at least healthcare workers in Pakistan and bring them to US.
Thank you, Shahid Hashmi Saab. Now, Dr. Marvin, we come again to the changing international politics, dynamics in the region. And my question is that until recently, Pakistan had deftly taken the advantage of its position in the US-China-Pakistan strategic triangle to improve its security vis-a-vis India. Islamabad faces challenges in navigating this great power competition. What Islamabad can gain from a working relationship with Washington on strategic interests, despite Pakistan's aligned interests with China, and how the balance of relationship with both US and China can be achieved?
A great deal can be said about Pakistan's foreign policy, but I think it's fair to say that Pakistan has been remarkably successful, adept in its foreign policy, in serving its national interests by the way it has been able over years, over decades, to balance its relationship with competing powers. Of course, I'm referring to the way in which it has over time been able to sustain its relationship with Saudi Arabia and Iran when they were certainly antagonists. That seems to have been relaxed to some extent now, but that required an enormous amount of, I think, of diplomatic skill. Also, its ability here, not necessarily appreciated on either side, its ability during the 1990s, after the Taliban had come to power in 96, its ability to both service the United States and its allies in facilitating the transit here of resources. Oil has been mentioned here as being critical, but just simply the movement of equipment, and being able to do that at the same time that it was throwing regularly a lifeline to the Taliban, keeping the Taliban very much in the game while it was, and I know some would say, well, this is duplicity and so on, but both policies were serving Pakistan's interest as it saw it. In the case of the Taliban, its insurance policy, what would happen after the U.S. and its allies left. It took a lot longer than they thought it was going to take, but ultimately the insurance policy kicked in. It just didn't have the benefits, as we know, that they expected it was going to have. And so we have now the kind of relationship between Pakistan and Afghanistan, which is not exactly what was hoped for. And with respect to China and the United States here, of course, we're all familiar with how they bridge that difference. But during times when the two powers did have differences. Also, Pakistan's remarkable ability to both establish and build on the relationship with China at the same time that it was recognizing that it had to maintain a relationship with the United States, essentially for the essential trade and financial links with the United States, and no one else could offer.
So
Yeah, let me just go on, if I may. Yeah, please. Well, I think it's clear here that the security and economic alliance with China and the U.S. relationship here now, it's going to be more difficult now to reconcile those. But both, I think, as Pakistan views it, are indispensable for its future. By the way, I think we're also looking at this balancing here as Pakistan tries to build a relationship with Moscow. At the same time that it recognizes what has the deterioration of, certainly with Ukraine, of relations with Putin and his regime. Now, how they were able to do this here over time, this balancing, was dependent in many respects with the fact that the antagonistic or competitive powers never made, in any of these cases, never made a demand for exclusivity. It never said that you got to choose between siding with one or the other. That certainly was very evident here in the Iran-Saudi Arabian. They were prepared to compartmentalize here their relationships. Now, it didn't mean that in all of this balancing, that you couldn't detect leaning, being skewing to one side or the other, but also an effort here to make sure that they remained as the balancer. I'm going to finish it. Now, as we looking ahead now, it seems that this, as the Chinese and Chinese-U.S. relations have deteriorated, that it is becoming more difficult to show this even-handedness here. Yes, it's I think recognize the greater importance now for reasons of debt, as anything else. The greater importance now of that China plays here, but there's every reason to believe that Pakistan will continue to value its relationship with the United States, and that it is not going to be forced by either side to take sides. Now, there was a time here in the Trump administration when one could have really questioned whether we were prepared to accept that. If you remember the rhetoric there that President Trump at the time used against Pakistan had really gotten insulting, nasty. But even so, and was more than just rhetoric, we did reduce our certainly cut our military commitments with Pakistan. but it nevertheless stopped short of really in any way trying to sever its relations where it would be impossible to reconstruct them. The Biden administration's view, and I might mention right from this table, I remember that, I guess it was Lisa Curtis, wasn't it, Michael? Sorry? Laid out here a view which was essentially anything which is in China's interest with regard to Pakistan is not in Alice Wells, yes, sorry, it was, excuse me, Lisa. Yes, who laid that out, and it made it very clear that it was seen in binary terms here, that you couldn't have a good relationship with the United States if you were the beneficiary of China's assistance. Now, finally here, looking forward here, I am concerned about two things. One, a second Trump administration, and whether it may very well, recognizing that the Biden administration has also been toughened its position, but a second Trump administration may very well not do what I think the Biden administration has done, and that is it is uneasy about that relationship, but I see it as having adopted a more nuanced view about the relationship between Pakistan and recognizing that the things that we can't do for them, that China can, and that China, to some extent, appreciates the fact that Pakistan is not going to sever its ties with the United States. The second thing I worry about here was brought up in the previous session, and that is public opinion. We saw just recently this so-called cyber conspiracy, and the fact that it became part of the Imran Khan electoral efforts to an effort here to regain office, particularly to denigrate the United States, to accuse the United States of being directly involved in trying to unseat him or take him out of the competition. So I worry about it, and I know that Ambassador Munta, for example, said that he was looking for a natural relationship between the United States, a favorable relationship in the middle class. But as I view it, it's that upper middle class today has, as I've been reading it, has imbibed some of the most creative but strange views, conspiratorial views. The ordinary Pakistanis don't develop these views, but it's in the middle class that I find that we have the deepest suspicions now of the U.S.'s intention, including its whether the United States is deliberately trying to undermine Pakistan's relationship with China. So finally, I think in this balancing that we've seen here, it's going to be important in Pakistan and the United States too, that there be the leadership on both sides that recognizes here with respect to China that there are areas of compatibility, there are areas not condominium, there's not going to be that kind of arrangement, but there are areas of compatibility which make it possible for Pakistan to have a working relationship with both countries, and it's not a matter of having to choose.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Marwan. We are running short of time, but we have to ask Dr. Ishrat Hussain very important question on economy. Dr. Ishrat, the U.S. and Pakistan appear keen to make their relationship more focused on economic cooperation. But from U.S. perspective, this is difficult to do until Pakistan's economy is stabilized. What can and should Pakistan do to make itself more attractive as an economic partner to the U.S.?
Well, I realize that we are running short, so I'll be very brief. I want the audience to ask questions.
Yeah.
The good thing which has happened is that we have completely severed the official aid between Pakistan and the United States. This is the best thing, in my view, which has happened too, because there was a complete misunderstanding on both sides. The Pakistanis felt that they were being used as a rentier state to serve the interest of the United States, while the US people were saying, we are giving billions of dollars, and these Pakistanis are not doing what we want them to do. So this was a source of tension between Pakistan and the United States, and I'm so glad that the Trump administration completely discontinued. I hope the future administration will also not be tempted to go for that approach. That there are 4 areas which I have identified in my talks here when I was at the Woodrow Wilson Center and then in other places where U.S. can make a huge contribution, which has nothing to do with the economic stability of Pakistan. One is this is a knowledge economy, which is going to be the driving force for the 21st century. The U.S. is still the citadel of technological advance and higher education. The United States should reorient the Fulbright Scholarship Program and others to provide opportunities for Pakistanis to get educational and technical training in the best institutions in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. That is the future for Pakistan's human capital formation, which will contribute to the well-being of Pakistan, because our human capital indicators are pretty poor at this stage. My second is that U.S., despite all the problems, is still generating technology, both in agriculture and industry, and now in the IT sectors, where the transfer of technology to Pakistan can actually upgrade the productivity of these sectors. And they have techniques and they have production which really has done wonders. The 2% of the population of the United States feeds 300 million people, but also exports. So there are opportunities for the technical know-how transfer between Pakistan and the United States. The third aspect which I would argue is that we have to introduce the people-to-people exchange, which a lot of people have talked about. And for that, the diaspora in Pakistan is the bridge, because there are a lot of people who are not aware of the opportunities in Pakistan. But if, for example, in the health sector, both my panelists have pointed out, there are opportunities for cementing the relations between Pakistan and the United States. And you can bring in educated Pakistanis in the various health sector fields. It's not just the medical doctors anymore. You have the whole paraphernalia of people. You train them and bring them. So I totally admire the initiative you are taking. And the fourth one is there should be more cultural exchanges. I remember when I was a student, we used to have the American bands coming to Pakistan, the American professors coming to Pakistan. We had the American, not the cricketers, but the American sportsmen in tennis and other places coming to Pakistan. And yeah, that's true. So we have to revive those cultural exchange programs. Those are the 4 areas which did not reflect anything on the receptivity of Pakistan itself, but these can be done in the medium and the long term. And that is what my proposal is.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ishrat. I want brief comments from Dr. Asif Kadir and Shahid Hashmi on, you discussed the diaspora role. Now I want to ask, what are the challenges and the opportunities in the investment and the trade partnerships between the two countries?
I think if you really ask this question from the heart, most of the Pakistani diaspora in the United States, their all stakes are in United States. They have married here. Their children are born in United States of America. Now the 3rd generation, their children are born here. Technically, they're all investments, both family and from the business point, are all vested in United States of America. But every heart there beats. They have a feeling that there is a Pakistan lives in them, and they want to do good for Pakistan. And one of the things which we, Pakistani diaspora, can do, which can enhance the economic part, is to make Pakistan as a favorite nation. The moment you do that, your ties of economic boost is big thing. Both your sports, which comes here, your export of textile, your export of surgical instruments. And although Pakistan, America is the #1 trade partner, just making the status will enhance the same opportunity big time. And that will enhance more trade, more Pakistani will trade and send that. And Pakistan should also do the same thing, that all the economic corridor that they make should make tax-free, especially in healthcare. People who are going to send MRIs, CT scans, X-ray, laboratory, all equipment, they place them in a tax-free zone for a number of years, so the Pakistani diaspora can do the business in Pakistan, and they should make it one key operation, because doing in business in Pakistan is not that easy. Although a lot of improvement has been done, but it should be a seamless operation that the people of Pakistan diaspora and American people, if they want to invest in Pakistan, they should not have no difficulty, or if they do have a difficulty, they do need a process set up to resolve the conflict.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Asif Kadir. The same question to Shahid Hashmi sir, the last comment.
Well, basically, we do need investment in Pakistan in various sectors. But I still think the most important sector which diaspora should invest is in education. The last meaningful investment which was done by US in Pakistan was in the 50s when they established Institute of Business Administration. And that was the first MBA granting institution outside of North America which granted MBA. Dr. Zaidi was a dean and director of IBA. He knows very well that that is the only few institutions which you could mention that they are doing something in Pakistan. Other than that, the education is totally destroyed. Unless we, the diaspora, which is right now divided here, but at least they would agree at least to invest in education.
Thank you. I think we can take one question from Dr. Naseem Ashraf. Only one. Yes, Dr. Sir.
Okay, thanks.
Comment or question? Yeah.
Just a quick comment first on what Dr. Kadir said. the highest public approval of America in Pakistan was in 2005 after the earthquake. And why it happened was because of the Chinooks. It was called the Chinook diplomacy. So you're absolutely right. The more it's public, people to people, it creates a sense of warmth, and the feeling is very different in the people then compared to just some high-flying agreements between the two governments. I want to just take a quick minute to talk about what Marvin talked about, and just ask him a question too, and that's with Afghanistan. Afghanistan is by no means settled. I'm from that region. The biggest mistake we made after 9/11, after we had bombed and finished Al-Qaeda and the Taliban militarily, we excluded the Pashtun from, and I think Ambassador Patterson this morning alluded to that as well. Not having a presence in Afghanistan. Musharraf used to always say that all Taliban are Pashtun, but all Pashtun are not Taliban. And I think in the Bonn peace process, we excluded the Afghan Pashtun, who are 50% of the population. Today, I think the takeaway for me for this event today was something Marvin mentioned about we must have a presence in Afghanistan. By we, I mean the United States. Without having this, it is not finished. We will make the same mistake that forced President Biden to repeat what Musharraf had told President Bush in New York in November of 2001, and I was there with him. President Musharraf asked President Bush and said, "Mr. President, the feeling in Pakistan is that whenever America needs Pakistan, America comes to Pakistan, but they leave us when the thing is done." And George Bush replied, looking directly at Musharraf, and said, "Mr. President, you tell them that you spoke to the President of the United States, and the President of the United States says, we are with you and we will never leave Pakistan. We are together on this, about the war on terror." I think it's really something that I feel right now we could be making the same mistake in Afghanistan. Afghanistan is much more complicated today than it was when the Taliban were defeated. I think that's, and my question really was, Marvin, what do you really see if Trump wins? The feeling in Pakistan is one of ambivalence. There are some people who believe that he said, "Oh, I will help you mediate Kashmir." Of course, we all know that he didn't even know where Kashmir was. But nonetheless, what do you see? Do you see anything seriously that could actually diverge?
Well, very quickly, we don't really have a developed policy towards Afghanistan. It's hard to see where we would go because we don't have any guideposts here. I think what we want to see here is we would love to see regime change, and we also know that it's not in the cards anytime soon. And so it's a question of given what are our objectives there, and include, of course, women's rights, human rights, above all. Given that, are we serving that interest by isolating them or engaging them? That's the question. And I'm coming down on the side of we've tried isolation, it didn't work. There are ways of engaging which I think can be productive.
So with this, the session comes to an end, and I am thankful to my panelists, Dr. Marvin, Dr. Ishrat Hussain, Dr. Shahid Hashmi Saab, and Dr. Asif Qadir. And thank you all for attending this session. And round of applause for my panelists. And thank you, Michael Kugelman. And now I request you to introduce and invite the closing keynote speaker.
Yeah, thank you very much, Gazanfar. Thank you to our panelists. We are wrapping up, but indeed we are going to have a concluding session, and we're very honored to be having a concluding session, concluding address from Ambassador Sada Kumber. He is a foreign policy and national security expert based in Texas. Since 2009, he's been an entrepreneur focused on the technology and healthcare fields. He's founded over a dozen tech companies. He's also held several positions in Texas, including on the Texas Business Council, and as a diplomat, he served as President George W. Bush's special envoy to the OIC. So he will offer some thoughts on economic security prospects in Pakistan. So please come to the podium, Ambassador Kumber. Thank you.
You should keep sitting. Yeah.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. How are you? Good afternoon. I certainly enjoyed the last session. It seems like everyone here is a heavy lifter in their own fields, at least. So I want to thank the leadership of International Academy of Letters, USA, and South Asia Institute of Wilson Center for inviting me to present concluding keynote remarks at today's conference. Looking back and forward, I will, in less than 15 minutes, touch issues with Pakistan fostering for nearly 70 years and end with what we call the American experiment that runs for nearly 200 years. But this morning, I believe we have already discussed all the issues that is faced by the region, all the political, geopolitical, and other strategic issues. What I would attempt to talk today is to how we can put Pakistan on the path of economic security. Because anything else, any other narrative that we can talk is really, at the end of the day, if we are not economically secured, then we are weak. And I think we need to have clear understanding. And of course, by design, I will bypass what I call historic issues, go straight to the matters relating to present day. Of course, in Pakistan, we have ongoing debates. And for 70 years, we are having these debates concerning governance, tax evasion, land reforms, constitutional changes, industry mafias living on subsidies, military intervention, and big question that was Pakistan to be a secular or religious country. And for US, going back to civil war, slavery, racism, and in recent time, anti-civil rights and anti-minority activities led by far-right white supremacists. We're going to ignore all of that. Let's start and with straight face say that today Pakistan stands at a crossroad. Sadly, it has stood there for 3/4 of a century, nearly 3/4. Upon becoming independent, it made an easy choice, but the wrong one. In place of genuine economic model, Pakistan used its security strength and geopolitical importance to attract aid money and patrons, especially the US. From the Cold War to the War of Terror, Pakistan delivered much and suffered much in advancing US interests. Post-US withdrawal from Afghanistan and calculated geopolitical shifts in South, Central and West Asia shoved Pakistan into serious economic crisis. I'm sure the leadership in Pakistan and Islamabad is diligently working to mitigate this crisis. But as of today, Pakistan remains figuratively parked at the IMF front door seeking $1 billion tranche every few months. Recently, I listened to Fareed Zakaria's discussing his new book, Age of Revolutions. He says it is critical to understand that successful revolutions of any kind depend on social and economic reforms, which start at the grassroots level. They do not depend on politics or even resources. Sometimes highly sought after resources are even a hindrance, as with the Middle East petro states, knowing the buyers will always come for oil, are late to pursue economic and social development. Pakistan, in trading heavily on its security and geopolitical strength as a resource, is also late to the game. Let's examine how some resource-poor countries have come out of this ditch. The American pundit Tom Friedman jokes, with some truth, that Taiwan's only natural resource is typhoons. Yet today the country leads as a global shipping hub and is even able to rattle global productivity in chip-making markets. Vietnam, while juggling its relationship with the US and China, concentrated on educating its population, especially workforce and vocational training programs, and today shows economic growth averaging around 7% a year, majority through factory-made exports. Many of us remember India's 1991 economic collapse and pushed the country into the brink of bankruptcy. Then entered Dr. Manmohan Singh, the new finance minister, allowing currency to trade at market rates, and took his first trip to guess where? Silicon Valley. He understood how essential IT would become to the global economy. Singh saw in educated people the talent which would position his country where it is today. India's GDP exploding from 266 billion in 1991 to 3.7 trillion in 2023. During his transformation, Singh made a witty yet astute observation that people are our oil. It is true of Taiwan, and it's equally true for Vietnam. With right choices, it could be true of Pakistan. Ladies and gentlemen, people are more valuable resource than any other resource. Returning to Pakistan, let's talk about a simple math. Today, to break even, Pakistan needs about $97 billion annually. In 2022, remittances were worth about $26 billion, and exports were around $40 billion, leaving $30 billion gap deficit. At macro level, we should see it as one-third, one-third, and one-third. To break even, Pakistan needs to bring in around $30 billion every year. In developing exports and positioning Pakistan in the global economy, the country needs to invest in its people through education and opportunity, especially the segment known as technical and vocational training. Each year, 3.5 million Pakistanis enter the workforce. Currently, there are only 500,000 spots available for Pakistan's vocational programs. But there are some exciting things happening in this regard. Recently, literally 6 weeks back, a delegation from Hunar Foundation came to Houston on a fundraising mission. Hunar is a Urdu word meaning someone with skills or knowledge. After listening to its goal, I facilitated a meeting with the Chancellor of Lone Star Community College, which probably has 93,000 students. A community college. Now, for benefits of non-Americans here, community colleges do most of the America's heavy lifting regarding vocational and technical training. From that meeting, I'm pleased to share that Lone Star and Hunar are in process to sign an MOU which will place Lone Star's college signature on Hunar's diplomas. This will qualify graduates for opportunities such as skilled electricians, plumbers, air conditioning, pipe fitting, and other outfield work for Kazakhstan, where Exxon has $65 billion contract for 20 years. Above is what I call bottom-up approach. Now let's talk about top-down initiative. My friend, Dr. Javed Laghari, who lives in Houston and has served as Member of Parliament and Chair of Pakistan's Higher Education Commission in Islamabad, recently published an article suggesting that Pakistan's fragmented IT industry earned $397 million last year. This is from today's sought-after services including AI, machine learning, metaverse, virtual reality, and all of this through freelancing, and is expected to bring nearly $3 billion by the end of 2025. Dr. Laghari says that the government is trying to scale Pakistan's IT industry, but not at the ambitious scale. He explains that the data shows IT industry in Pakistan could bring in $10 billion over next 3 years. If 1/3 of 1/3 gap needed to break even can be actualized in 3 years, then all Pakistan needs is to set the momentum, attracting final foreign direct investment and IT support activities around that field. Now, can Lahore really become New Bangalore? I believe the answer is yes. The reason is that this technology and innovation path to success is being led by social media active, competent generation that is educated in the West and with sound ethics to play fair game. Recently, a Lahore-based tech company engaged in last-mile delivery business like Amazon came to the U.S. seeking to raise second round of $25 million in funding and returned to Lahore with $37 million. Currently, an Austin, Texas-based tech accelerator is in the process of recruiting 2 Pakistani tech startups for their 1-year fully paid incubation program. This program takes 12 promising foreign-born entrepreneurs every year and nurtures them. In their last round, 4 out of 12 companies hit valuation between $350 and $500 million. I know a couple of Pakistan's entrepreneurs could easily achieve unicorn exits, and then the momentum picks up. The 1/3 gap can be quickly bridged. Don't underestimate these new generation educated people in Pakistan. The first ever kid who hacked the computer in the world was a Pakistani kid. Once that module is in place, it is a matter of letting the world know, as we say in Texas, we are wide open for business. Ladies and gentlemen, kindly note the cases I just shared involved partnership with Americans. U.S. today leads in deep science, core research, creative innovation, and futuristic technologies. It exceeds every other nation in making of the billionaires. This brings us full circle to Fareed Zakaria's point that successful revolutions are built upon social and economic reforms and at the grassroots levels. Speaking about backward and forward, let me conclude by sharing where America stands today and how I see its path forward. We all remember the American Revolution. Today, what I see is the continuation of what we recall as the American experiment that has now run for more than 200 years. In that time, U.S. experienced significant challenges: the Civil War, the Great Depression, World Wars, civil rights turbulence of the 1960s, and the Cold War. While other democracies in the same period have folded under similar challenges, tipping at least temporarily into dictatorship, fascism, or Soviet-style communism, America has always emerged with its democracy intact. There is no doubt that America's democratic and pluralistic experiment is facing some of the strongest turbulence it has encountered in a very, very long time. But as I said, ladies and gentlemen, the next person who wins by betting against the United States will be the first. Pakistan is at the cusp of genuine growth and development opportunity, opening itself to the world. While there are many roads to this map, America is the highway. America should be generous anyway, considering the hardships Pakistan has endured, advancing its interests. But genuine economic development by Pakistan could give America a reason beyond the right thing to do. A reasons of self-interest to genuinely invest in a bilateral relationship over the long term. And yes, then Ambassador Masood, if he was here, I would tell him, then you don't have to call Madam Secretary or the White House asking to put in a good word at the IMF. Thank you very much.
Enlightening. Thank you. We've come to the end. Thank you to all of you who have stayed with us up until the very end. I want to thank once again all of our speakers, our panelists, our keynote speakers, and others, as well as the Wilson Center's co-sponsors and supporters, and especially, most of all, our partner for this conference, Gazanfar. It's been another successful collaboration. Thank you all in the audience here and also online for tuning in. And now I invite those of you here with us in the building to join us for lunch. It'll just be across the hall. We'll have colleagues directing you in there. But thank you very much, and we are now adjourned. One more round of applause. Thank you.